I'm going to call the March 3rd, 2025 meeting of the Select Board to order, and I'm going to turn it over to Mark Howell, our clerk, to take roll.
We're going to begin with the roll since we have a remote attendance. Ms. Ackerman?
Present.
Ms. Hartman?
Here.
Myself, Mr. Howell, I'm present. Mr. McKinnott?
Here.
And Ms. Ravelli?
Here.
Everybody's here. Great. Okay, so we're going to move directly into public comment. Public comment will be for up to 15 minutes, with each speaker being allotted 3 minutes for items which are not elsewhere on our agenda when we normally take public comments for those items when they come up. If anybody would like to make a public comment here in the room, please approach the podium. Otherwise, use the raise hand function on Zoom.
Around 1 a.m., firefighters were called to Constitution Ave.
Okay, we're getting some noise.
Can we ask people to mute, please?
Yeah.
They cut to units, a challenge for firefighters.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, yeah, please begin with your name and...
Hi, I'm Andrea Solomon. I live at 75 Ash Street. I just wanted to point out during the last meeting there was some confusion about how one might become a member of a town committee or board. I have personally served on 2 town committees, one after the other, not having known a single select board member at the time I was appointed. I simply filled out a green card, which is available at the townhouse and on the town website, checked off the committees I was interested in serving, and I waited for a call. There are about 60 committees and around 400 people serving on those committees. Right now there are dozens of openings and more coming as they all have staggered term limits and vacancies come up every year. One of the few requirements for many of them is that you live in Concord and are able to regularly attend the meetings for that committee. While the Select Board appoints members to many of them, there are several that are appointed by the town manager, like the 2 I served on, and others by the NRC and the town moderator. It may seem that some people are serving on more than one committee, but this is likely because they are on a subcommittee, which by definition is a subset of the main committee they are serving. They may also serve as liaisons to attend meetings by other boards and committees, not to participate, but to report back on agendas that may be relevant to their own committee. There may also sometimes be task forces made up of people who represent interests specifically relevant to the subject of that task force. It will include members from different relevant committees and boards, as well as stakeholders such as residents and experts who bring different perspectives to an issue that the task force has been assembled to research. There are other groups like the Community Preservation Committee, whose charter requires representation from other commissions and boards. Meetings of all these groups are posted, public, and recorded. Luckily, this is an easy thing to investigate and understand. I hope that people will go to the town website, not only to see what all these volunteers and committees do, but also possibly to join them, because we need more of you. And it's a great way to connect and collaborate with your fellow Concordians. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Craig Amiller, AWMILLER, 27 Lang Street. And I'm going to start by saying I don't know the chair personally or professionally or anything. I met her, talked to her once in passing. So I want to begin with that. I'm responding to the February 28th article, amid more pushback, Select Board to weigh appointments policy. Whether intentional or not, this approach, the approach that's been taken, contributes to the perception that the Select Board is simply appointing friends and folks that they know rather than conducting an open and fair selection process, said Gwen Acton. Okay, that's her perception. My perception is that we live in a small town with a bunch of committees. And there's only so many people who are going to have the expertise, the time, the capacity to do that. And I regard this as a manufactured problem. designed to hurt you in this election cycle. That's my perception. And also because to say the system is somehow rigged is a common political tactic if you're in a minority in the town. It looks to me like a stunt, not a problem. Thanks.
Thank you for your comment. Anyone else?
Kristen Haggerty, Revolutionary Road. And I will try to add to what I've heard without repeating too much of it, because I appreciate that what you're going to do today on strengthening and diversifying our boards and committees, and I recognize that this is a similar discussion that happened in the fall of 2021. You know, as you heard, we have a strong town manager and select board who are supported by these, you know, numerous committees and volunteers who staff those. And it always amazes me that so many people are willing to give so much of their time on top of other responsibilities. Or perhaps you see it the opposite way, that so few people can get so many things done. I continue to be impressed not only the breadth of knowledge and expertise that my fellow citizens bring to these committees, but also their willingness to learn, both new subject matter and learn from each other. But given the amount of time committee work takes, there is a subset of the population who can invest that time at any given moment. And sometimes it makes sense for people to serve on more than one committee. Thank goodness that they do, or the work wouldn't get done. So I'd like to thank all the volunteers who serve on the committees and recognize that you are doing work in service of betterment of the town and for no ulterior motive. To suggest otherwise demeans their service and creates unnecessary conflict. Although it appears that the discussion about APP 10 is prompted by the seating of the recent task force, the policy is intended to apply broadly to all committees. And the bottom line is that in general, it's hard to find enough people to fill all the committee seats. And we should not be making it harder for committee chairs to find members or for people to find committees to serve on. So I realize that you're talking about the policy, but I'd like to suggest that the real focus is on ways to efficiently and consistently focus on recruitment, member education, and mentoring. So for example, we could make it far easier to understand how to serve on a committee. For example, you could group committees by interest or by days of the week they meet and things like that. We could do a much better job of building a pool of potential volunteers by simply consistently responding to people who have expressed interest and keeping them informed of all opportunities as they become available. It's in the policy, but the system needs to be improved. So many people could, have submitted the card and not heard back. And we could proactively be recruiting, like we say we want to, particularly voices who have traditionally been underrepresented on committees. And we could educate new committee members on running and participating in effective meetings to improve the experience for members and the public. And lastly, we could engage seasoned members to mentor new members. So I hope that the message that comes from your discussion tonight is that if a citizen has time, willingness, and openness to participate in the work it takes to make our town thrive, that there is a place for them.
Thank you for your comment.
I'm Jim Sherblum, 199 Park Lane. And after the last 2 years, we've raised about $1.2 million for the Wright Tavern to renew the building. And about 6 months ago, we set up tentatively the Wright Tavern Center for Civic Engagement. We're doing a survey right now that is generating a lot of interest from people who've never thought about serving on a committee and ways of being involved. And I just want to offer the Wright Tavern Center for Civic Engagement as a resource to you as you think about better ways to make more transparent and reach people who might otherwise never have been reached out to.
That's great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I actually had a point of order. I wanted to talk about APP 10. Should I wait till the agenda or stay
So
on?
I'm realizing
confused.
that
Yeah, you kind of spilled over there.
we have wandered into that, and I also recognize that it's at the very end of our agenda, and some of you may have supper to do or something. So let's take it here. And for those of you that do stick around for our discussion, because APP 10 and our approach to it is on the agenda tonight, don't feel like you have to repeat whatever you're saying right now. When that discussion comes up, I'm pretty confident that we can retain those points.
Okay, then I'm Ellen Quackenbush, 206 Prairie Street. I want to make 2 comments about APP 10 and the overall recruitment and nomination process. First, while there's always room for improvement, the sheer volume of committee volunteers in town testifies that the current system is not fundamentally broken. By my count, we have 63 committees with an average of 7 members per committee. That is 441 Concordians currently volunteering their time and talent to be on a town committee. This is more than some attend some of the days at town meeting. So put that in perspective. A column in the Bridge profiling committees with openings might help to get the word out and encourage first-time volunteers to try it out. I love the idea of mentoring. But truly, committee membership is open to all. It's not as mysterious as some people have made it out to be. Second, dual committee appointments should not be characterized as a negative practice to be avoided. Many high-profile committees and task force use dual committee appointments to facilitate collaboration, alignment of committee goals, and speed of decision-making. For example, Warner's Pond requires that 3 of its 16 members be current members of the Recreation Commission, the Natural Resources Commission, or the Public Works Commission. I've served on many town committees, and in my humble opinion, dual committee appointments and/or extremely close collaboration between committees is key for committee functioning. As you rewrite APP 10, please fully explain how dual committee appointments improve our town government and help our town achieve its long-range goals. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And anyone else, anyone online? Thank you. So we'll move into the consent agenda now. Move to approve the consent agenda with thanks to Henry and Janet Bellant for their gift to the Town 250 Fund.
We need to take the minutes of February 10th off
Okay,
the
yes,
consent
that's
agenda.
right.
Is there anything else that should come off of the consent agenda?
February 10th.
No, just the
Yep.
minutes.
Is that it?
All right.
That I can see, yeah.
So I second after taking the minutes off for the consent.
All in
Hearing
favor?
no comments. Ms. Ackerman,
She's on mute.
how do you vote? On the
Sorry, it's taking me a minute to,
Can
you hear me?
Okay. Yeah, did you say aye?
Yes.
She did.
Okay.
Yes.
Sorry, Ms. Hartman?
Aye.
Myself, I'm an aye. Mr. McKinnon?
Aye.
And Mr. Velli?
Aye.
Okay. Move to approve the Select Board appointments and reappointments of Douglas Ellis of 11 Concord Green, Unit 1, to a full membership on the Historical Commission for a term ending May 31st, 2028. Thomas Claflin of 113 Hubbard Street to Associate Member of the Library Committee for a term ending May 31st, 2028. Scott Akers Moore of 86 Holden Wood Road to an Associate Member of the Library Committee for a term ending May 31st, 2028. To reappoint Josh Lee of 65 Everett Street to the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Commission for a term ending May 31st, 2028. To reappoint Dan Drazen of 197 Belknap Street to the Concord Housing Development Corporation for a term ending May 31st, 2028. Reappoint Ari Charles of 654 Old Bedford Road to the Board of Assessors for a term ending May 31st, 2028. And reappoint Theo Kendermans of 252 Fairhaven Road to the Zoning Board of Appeals with an APP 10 exemption, Section 7B2, for an additional term ending May 31st, 2028.
What about,
And is there
Greg?
also Greg Higgins?
yeah,
Did I miss one?
yeah, the last one, the last one.
Oh, maybe, you don't have that.
I don't have that one.
Sorry. It's
Sorry.
Right there.
Yeah. Okay, Greg Higgins of 51 Cottage Lane to the Economic Vitality Committee for a term ending May 31st, 2028. Do I need a
Second.
Any discussion? Ms. Ackerman?
aye.
Ms. Hartman?
Aye.
Myself, I'm an aye. Mr. McKinnon?
Aye.
Mr. Velli?
Aye.
Thank you all.
I want to make a comment about the select board appointments and reappointments. I heard someone the other day told me that they were reappointed, but they hadn't heard. So I'm wondering if we should get back to these people routinely. I mean, some of us do, some of us don't, to just kind of confirm the vote that we've taken tonight. I wonder if I could ask
So,
you to do
I
that.
mean, I didn't think they got on here unless we told them that they were getting on here. Oh, your
Yeah.
mic's off, Mary.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry.
So I hope that we're the ones who validated that they're eligible for reappointment.
No, but that they actually
Yes.
were reappointed is
Well,
what
they're not
this-
reappointed till we vote them, and then, yeah, we should follow up after the
That's what I'm
vote, right?
saying.
Okay, all right. I'm sorry, no, I
okay,
didn't know what
that's
you
okay.
said.
No,
Yeah.
but-
Maybe I didn't
so,
say it
So,
clearly.
for example, last week we reappointed somebody at the library committee, and I didn't get back to them until today.
yeah.
And
Right.
So just in full disclosure,
Fair.
so there was a lag
got
there.
it.
So
Right.
I.
But
and then-
I'm wondering if
I don't know if
maybe-
it was them or not, but
But
I.
It wasn't them,
Yeah,
actually.
but I should.
But
have-
good for
I should
fessing
have
up. You
responded the
thanks for
next day
fess-
and said, "Hey, this went through."
The other, just a point, because this has happened to me on committees, I've never gotten a confirmation, but I thought the town clerk actually sent a confirmation out
Yeah, usually.
as well. They
Really?
usually do.
Because you have to be
Right.
sworn into office.
Yeah.
But a reappointment.
Maybe
as
it's
well.
not happening
The
fast
reappointment.
enough.
You have to be sworn
Right.
into office because it's a new
Again.
appointment.
Also, I wanted to express a little appreciation here. Most of these that I just read off, in fact, I think all of them, are reappointments for terms ending May 31st, 2028, which means that these committees have proactively brought forward their reappointments, people who are serving second terms generally, early enough for us to
Yep.
get it done before their first term expires, which would have been May 31st. So this is not, I find that the time that it's most important to talk to people is when they're first going on, because they may not know when their term starts. And for anyone out there who's not familiar, you also need to present yourself at the town clerk, receive some information, get sworn in before you can begin actually fully participating in whatever committee you may have been appointed to. Okay.
Okay. We're ahead of schedule.
We're ahead of schedule.
I'm going to keep going. I'm going to move now to the chair's report. We're going to start with looking at the legislative letter that we have in our packet. I mentioned that at our last meeting, that there are two bills that are sponsored by legislators and one in the Governor's Municipal Empowerment Act that are intending to extend remote options for town meetings, this type of town meeting, not the annual town meeting, and make that permanent. And the letter that you have in your packet, I'm sure you've read it. I'm sure you've also read some of the correspondence that we've got. And I'm wondering if we're ready to approve that letter. Wendy, do you have something?
Well, I had a question, and I don't know, Carrie, I might catch you off guard here. I was reading this language, and I'm reading specifically the House bill, and there's a section 10C here. And let me just read this, and you tell me if I read it differently. It says here, in a town having a representative or open town meeting form of government, the town moderator may, in consultation with the select board and local public safety or public health, call for any town meeting to be held through remote participation or a hybrid of in-person and remote participation, including but not limited to by means of video, da-da-da. My interpretation here, does that mean town meeting could be held remotely? I just, because it mentioned the moderator, I sort of got led to believe that it could.
Well, it sounded that way to me,
Right.
however, I am not, I'm not
Yeah.
the expert on this, so
Right.
I'm not really sure.
So I just want to
Doesn't it
raise
apply,
it.
though, to towns that have representative town
It says
government?
both, in a town having a representative or open town meeting form of government.
Okay,
So I just want to raise this as a, did we know that? Because
But this is legislation that you're writing to support.
correct. I just want this committee to be aware of that, because I think this is a topic of interest to all our citizens, and they're in support of that, I believe. Well, let me say that. We're going to have a warrant article on it, I believe. But
We
so
have
I
a-
just want to point that
we
out.
have a
I'm still in support of this regardless.
Okay.
I just wanted to bring this to everyone's attention.
Thank you.
That's all.
Thank you. Any other discussion?
I think we did receive some correspondence on this, and I think that directionally, this is absolutely what we should be
Right.
supporting. I recognize that these bills are not final bills. And so there may be some details that need either some clarification or even some correction. For example, the notion that a board could decide to, for example, only have remote participation and therefore sort of lock themselves in a room, I recognize that certainly flies in the face of what we would recognize as the open meeting law, and I think our policy of the door is always open for any open meeting, and remote participation is available as well. So it's an and, not an or, is certainly what I'm supportive of. Other than that, I think done is better than perfect, and we should get the letter out.
I agree.
I agree. Cameron, do you have any comment?
Look, there's a lot of, Wendy, what you bring up and some of the letters that we saw,
Yeah.
those are interesting. They are interesting points.
Yeah.
They are.
I think separately, are we going to endorse the bills that this letter
The support.
says, I'm in favor of the letter? Right?
Terry, do you have any comment? Terry?
Oh, she's working on her mute button, I think. She's looking. There you go.
Okay, sorry. Yes, I support the letter.
Okay. So are we ready for a vote? Do you want to make a motion for us, Mark?
Sure. Move to approve the legislative letter in support of codifying remote meeting options.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Oh,
Sorry,
but we have to do a roll
We need a
call.
roll, sorry.
Ms. Ackerman?
Aye.
Ms. Hardman?
Aye.
Myself, I'm an aye. Mr. McKinnon?
Aye.
Mr. Velli?
Aye.
It's unanimous, great. My second comment in the chair's report is we're losing our rep to the Minuteman Regional Vocational High School. Steve Ledoux's done a great job these last few years. That is a position that's appointed by the town moderator, so I wanted, I thought it was.
I thought it was too.
I thought it was. There she is.
No, with the Carmen Reese Town moderator, with the revised district agreement
Yeah.
that was adopted, that changed the numbers of, and so on, the appointment authority was shifted to the select board in each town.
Okay, we're appointed, so makes this even, this makes it even better. Then I'm putting a call out for volunteers who might be interested in that position. It's a great school. It's a great job. They've got a lot of energy. They've got a great morale. If anyone is interested, please contact us, fill out a volunteer card, and thank you to Mr. Ledoux for doing such a great job these past few years.
And do we have, sorry, just for what, there's one from every town that,
Yes,
Yeah.
okay, so
Yeah.
we send one every
We
other
send-
town
yep.
that sends kids. Okay.
every
Yeah.
participating town.
Each member of the Minuteman region, of which there are some communities that send students to Minuteman that aren't members.
Okay, and finally, I'd like to make some comments in response to some things that were said about the policy that the Select Board uses to appoint citizens to boards, committees, task forces, and working groups. As I said last time, APP 10 is a policy, it's not legislation. It's a policy, and like any policy, it remains flexible, and it adapts as we learn new things. And we learn new things, we learn best practices, and we adopt those best practices. What we haven't done is we haven't documented some of that, and that's what we're going to start to correct tonight, to document our current practice so that it becomes policy. I also wanted to clarify that there is no law requiring a public interview of any candidate to be nominated or appointed to a board or a committee or a task force or a working group. However, there is guiding legislation that I want people to be aware of. It's part of our town charter. It's Section 2B. It gives the Select Board the right and the authority and the responsibility to form committees to advise the Select Board. Committees don't spontaneously form. They're formed by the Select Board according to the town charter, that as elected officials, it's our responsibility to do so. So we form these committees to advise us on certain things. We want to pay close attention, we want to take a deeper dive, whatever. Section 2B in our charter also gives the select board the right and the authority as elected officials to appoint people to these boards and committees. That's our authority and that's our right and that's our job as elected officials. We will do a better job as far as documenting the policy so that people are aware of it. As someone pointed out during public comment, that we have over 400 people in town giving their time and their energy and their skill to making better decisions, and I think we should be thankful to them. I know I am very thankful to all the people that make Concord what it is. So we will improve the policy tonight, but I just wanted to clarify what is law and what is not. Thank you. Next, Town Manager's Report.
Thank you and good evening. Very late this afternoon, we sent out a weekly operations report. You may not have had the opportunity to see that yet, so I just wanted to highlight some of the items, not to steal any thunder from the agenda item tonight where you're talking about the town meeting warrant, but I did want to just note that the warrant for the 2025 annual town meeting has closed. It will be posted on the website later this week after it is ordered by you this evening, and we review the each of the warrants for legal compliance with town council and the moderator tomorrow. I wanted to mention, again, not to steal any thunder from anybody, but we will be posting the warrant or inserting the warrant in the March 28th edition of the Concord Bridge. This is new this year. This is coming out of a recommendation from the Town Meeting Study Committee, as is the Town Meeting Briefing Book. So for those of you who can remember back to COVID when we had town meeting on the outside on the Doug White Field, we had something very similar to the town meeting briefing book, at least from my perspective. I think it worked really well. It is something that takes some time to put together, and it does require people to make sure that they have their handouts, et cetera, ready more timely than is typical for our annual town meeting timetable, but I do think it will be helpful. So it'll be one book that everybody brings to town meeting, and it will have everything you need to follow along with town meeting. I wanted to, actually in the report there's an update on MCI Concord. I'm going to hold that because I know you have that on your agenda this evening. I wanted to note that we were able to have our first Black History Month event last week. We had a lunch and learn for town staff. We had about 30 participants, and we had a speaker come in and talk about hidden history, 10 things to know about Black history in Concord. We did have that recorded, and it is available online. It was a very nice event for a small group of people. Of course, everybody was invited to that. I also wanted to note that the Visitor Center is hosting a free series of tours entitled A Fight for Freedom, Patriots of Color Walking Tour. This will begin on March 22nd and run through June 30, 2025. The tours will leave at 1 p.m. each day from the North Bridge. All ages are welcome. The tour series is co-sponsored with the Minuteman National Park, the Robbins House, our Visitor Center, and it is a Concord 250 event, and it is funded through the Massachusetts Office of Travel and Tourism. I know everybody knows that the middle school opened last Monday. There's some interesting statistics in the report from our building department. The building staff conducted over 200 inspections at the middle school over the last 18 months. And also last Monday, February 24th, abatement began on the Sanborn School in preparation for its demolition. The building department also wanted to call out two other very large projects in town that I'm not sure everybody is aware that are happening, but there is a 23,000 square foot art center at the Concord Academy. I think most people probably know about that, and an 80,000 square foot field house at the Middlesex School. Both of those projects are currently under construction, and obviously our building department is very involved in inspections. I wanted to mention that on March 10th at 141 Keyes Road in the first floor meeting room, there will be two sessions hosted by the Planning Division on the Assabet River pedestrian bridge. One will be at 7:30 a.m. and one at 5:30 p.m. So anybody who's interested in understanding the most updated information on that project is encouraged to attend. They will be, a recording of those meetings will also be available online. We have a new public health inspector in the health division. Bethany Yates began employment with us, I believe, just last week. She joins us from the town of Framingham, where she worked as a health inspector for over 3 years. Let's see. I wanted to mention, and I think I've mentioned this to you before, but the Green Homes tour is coming up on March 15th, Saturday, March 15, between 1 and 4 p.m. There's information available online, and this tour is specifically geared at people who might want to understand electrification options in their own homes. Another important project to note is that we have finally entered into a contract for the BD Center, the UV light installation project. This feels like it's been a long time in coming. The new UV system will enhance water quality and treatment efficiency, reducing chemical usage and lowering long-term maintenance costs. The project reinforces the Recreation Division's dedication to sustainability initiatives, ensuring responsible resource management and long-term environmental benefits. I will note that we have a very large summer recreation program, and we are looking for lots of young people to come join our staff as lifeguards, front desk staff, carousel teachers, working at the camp. So anybody who's looking for a summer job, please check out our website. I wanted to note that yesterday we had a fairly large water main break just over here at 157 Keyes Road. It was reported at 12:58 p.m., and it looks like it was completely attended to by 8 p.m. There was a drop in pressure, I think, that many people in the area experienced, but I think fortunately there were very few outages of water as a result. I did want to mention that the board had requested that we put together, I think, a news release on the Symes decision. And I did ask council to put together a memo that we are in final review, that the intention would be to release it to the public so they understand the thought process behind the decision not to appeal that case. We will, it's a little wordy, so we will also do a news, a release, but make that full document available. It's only 2 pages, but it's not the easiest thing to get through, because there are 3 different actions that are involved, and it's over a period of time. But we do expect to have that out by the end of this week. And then just one final note, we will be back to you with the final draft of the fiscal 26 budget on March 24th, a week earlier than we had originally anticipated. The CFO and I, along with our budget analysts, continue to comb over everything in the budget, and we do believe that we have a bit of good news relative to the cuts that were originally proposed or identified in the fire department and in the library. And so we're hoping to be able to restore some of those cuts based on some additional work that we have done. But we will have something final perhaps by the end of this week. I know the library committee is meeting. I think the trustees are meeting as well, and I know they're anxiously awaiting to hear what their budget might look, as is everybody in the final recommendation. So there still are some significant cuts. I believe we mentioned maybe 3.5 FTE reduction or something in that neighborhood. We are still proposing those cuts, but we feel that we've found a way to make some adjustments so that we are able to make some improvements, particularly in the fire department and in the library, in their budget recommendations. So.
Okay.
So we'll have more. So we'll have a definite budget by March 24th and vote at that night. On that night.
Yes,
Great.
and then the full budget book available March 31st in
Great.
front of the public hearings
Great.
that are,
That's great.
I believe April 10th is the night that we're going to the Finance Committee.
Great. Very good. Any questions for Kerry?
I just noticed that the graphic that says the annual town meeting will start on June 2nd also includes a time, and I believe the decision about the time is something we're going to make tonight.
Right.
So,
I'm not sure that's live just yet, that
Okay.
picture, but we certainly will make sure
directionally
it's
correct.
reflective of what's happening.
All right.
Carrie, I have a question about the two buildings that were being built, one at Concord Academy and one at Middlesex School. Do we get building permit fees for those buildings?
We do.
We do.
Yeah.
Does that go into our new growth when we're figuring out the levy capacity?
Anything that's taxable would be part of new growth.
That this isn't?
I would say
Okay.
that is not taxable.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Anything, any other?
Can I just make one comment? I think,
Sure.
and actually it was related to the briefing book, but maybe it might be waiting for Carmen, but some committees are starting to talk about, well, we could bring a handout to the town meeting. And I know that sort of the briefing book, the intention is not to have all those little pieces of paper floating around. So
That's right.
maybe or maybe it's something at the chair's breakfast. We could talk a little bit about that once we know what's in the briefing book. But I think we should get the word out that
You're right.
if it should be part of the briefing book, I don't know if there's rules around the briefing book, and maybe we'll get to that later, but we should start setting those expectations.
That's a good point. I'm hearing that too. And what I heard, well, we can talk about this
Yeah.
when we're talking. Great. Any other questions, comments for Carrie? Great. Now, we're early for the, let me see, the quarterly update was at 6:50, and I don't see Dan or Patrick here. So, Carmen, do you want to go early? Great.
Is this on?
I don't think
Yes,
so.
great, okay. Good evening, Carmen Reese, Town Moderator. So there's three things with respect to town meeting to discuss with the Select Board this evening. I would say the first is the order of the articles in the warrant. And you should have a proposed order in your packet,
We do.
which I and town staff and Chair Hartman have all kind of worked on. And the usual things that we think about in thinking through the order are we know that we typically have the highest attendance on the first night, and so we try very hard to have the operating budgets of the three budget units on that first night, the schools, K through 8, the region, and the town on that first night. And we also try to bear in mind how many nights staff from particular departments might have to attend town meetings, so that we try to group, for example, all the planning board articles together, whether they are advanced by the planning board or as a citizen petition. Everything having to do with the Public Works Department together, and they have a wide array of things this year. We have as a safety valve open to us, and it's a recommendation of the town meeting study committee this year that we think a little bit more. The moderator has always had the ability to pull something out of its scheduled order, a particular warrant article, and pre-schedule it as a high interest article for a time certain. And the recommendation, and I'm not sure if it's quite finalized, but I think the recommendation of the town meeting study committee is going to be that that we use that a little more, so that when there are multiple high interest articles, for example, whether or not they're binding articles. So, for example, last year we had an article relating to advice on naming the middle school, which was not binding as a vote by town meeting, but was nonetheless very high interest. So whether it's high interest because it has high impact or high interest because people really care about it, those are both good reasons to name and identify an article as high interest. So regardless what the order is that we set, it will remain an option for me to pull a few things out based on what the level of interest appears to be in the hearings, in the Concord Bridge, at the meetings of boards and committees that are talking about the warrant articles in the lead up to town meeting. Any such article would be identified before the briefing book goes out, so that the briefing book, which will get mailed to every household, will have identification of what articles will be pulled out as a special interest article and what time that's going to happen on what day.
But they could happen on the first night as well, right?
It could, but I think that it's unlikely given how long it takes us to get through the budget articles and the capital articles. So I would be reluctant to schedule something high interest on the first night, given all that other work that has to be done on the first night.
So what I'm hearing you say is that you're thinking that the budget articles and the capital articles will in fact be heard the first night.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, that has traditionally been our approach, and that is what determines our tax rate.
Good.
Which impacts everybody.
Okay, so I'll open it up. Any questions for moderator?
I had two. The one that really struck me though was the ordering of the stormwater system expenditure, which is one of our new enterprise funds. I was just curious. It's number 36, and just curious why it wasn't coupled with all the other sort of enterprise related ones, which are usually later. Articles 50 and beyond, or 51 and beyond. I don't know if that's...
I'm sorry, which number was it?
So number 36 is the stormwater system expenditures.
Right.
Which is Public Works. And most of the Public Works, or a lot of them, are Articles 50 and beyond, or 51 and beyond. So I'm just curious why that wasn't grouped with the other sort of Public Works articles. Unless it was high interest or there was something deliberate. I just don't know what goes into this ordering.
So what I would say about that is that many of the Public Works articles we know are going to end up on the consent calendar because they are routine articles that simply authorize the various departments to spend the fees that they bring in for the things the fees are charged for.
Yep.
And those are going to end up on the consent calendar. This one is, Article 36 is, this is the first time that we are looking at this budget. And this will be new, the rate structure will be new, and I expect that people will be interested in it. And so it is scheduled in a place where if we look at MCI Concord, there's, Mary, is that the one that has some discussion about the wastewater treatment plant at MCI Concord?
No, this was...
Okay, well, there's
funding.
another one that does. Let's see where
No,
this was
funding, wasn't it?
for a placeholder for possible consulting for zoning work.
services.
Yeah, it's not for the...
Sorry, is 36 just regular stormwater
It's
system
new.
expenditures, or this is the new
This is the
fund?
new, this is the new fund.
The new enterprise
Right.
fund.
So this will be the very first time that a
Right.
budget for stormwater expenditures will be
Right.
presented
Right.
at town meeting, so that we'll understand what the full amount is to be raised through fees. And I expect that there would be an explanation of what the fee structure is going to look like, so that people understand what the proposed program is, why it's costing what it's costing, and how it's going to impact them.
Right, exactly.
So Wendy, there's no particular reason why it needs to go there.
Yeah.
It could go in a different place.
And I'm okay with that. I mean, to your
So I
point.
Terry,
Sorry, go ahead, Terry.
I would request that this article be named Stormwater System Rate Structure and Expenditures, or something about the
Yeah.
rate structure needs to be included.
No, it's,
That was very confusing to me.
well,
If I might, Terry, the rate structure is actually determined and voted on by the Public Works Commission. It's the budget that town meeting has control over. So,
Okay. You're
so town meeting would be informed of what that rate structure looks like. But the only control that town meeting has over this exercise is whether town meeting will approve the full amount of the budget, which will then be levied against citizens and entities, both taxable and non-taxable, by
Right.
the way,
Yep,
because
yep,
nonprofits will
That's right.
pay for this as well, the same as they do for other fees. So that's the control the town meeting has over the full budget, not over the rate structure. If you want to influence the rate structure, you have to go to the Public Works Commission meetings and talk to them
You're
about
right,
it.
you do.
Yeah. Okay.
Any other questions about this?
Yeah, just about the order. So I'm kind of a fan of like all the things that, rather than everything where we're asking people for more money that's not sort of in their normal sort of budget and normal taxes, rather than sort of sprinkling them, I wonder, it's just a thought, right? So I look at like a debt exclusion for road maintenance, the
You want to
amenities
give,
building.
Cameron, will you give me some numbers so I know?
Yeah, sorry, 8, 13, 36, I don't know if there's others, but, I mean, it's just a thought, like, if we're gonna ask people for more money, you know, let's show them the full, you know, hey, we're asking for this, we're asking for this, we're asking for this, versus kind of trying to, you know, have it sprinkled around. It sometimes is harder, there's people on different days, it's sometimes harder for people to know, wait a second, what's the sum total of what we just kind of went through and approved, so.
We kind of have. If you look at Finance Committee, that's all budget impact. So that's all going to be, to your point about if you're asking if there's a tax impact, everything that's associated with Finance Committee is going to have that. So
It's just a thought.
You just kind of group that
It's a
way.
thought for discussion, which is, okay, now we're gonna, hey, town, now we're gonna talk about all the things that we're asking you to approve paying more money for over and above the normal town budgets, right?
Well-
We're asking for the roads, we're asking for an amenities building, we're asking for the stormwater fund. You know, how do you feel about approving, you know, these different forms
So
of
there's
spending?
certainly more than one way to organize
Yeah,
these,
yeah.
no
Absolutely,
question about it.
absolutely.
And right now, the way they are organized is by budget entity, so that whatever the town is asking for town expenditures is kind of lumped together with the town things. The K through 8 schools are lumped together with the K through 8 schools, and the district expenditures are there. And I suppose that one exception is, you know, things like Article 36, the stormwater system expenditures, but you know, that doesn't hit property taxes, that's a fee. So, so it is a separate animal.
It is. It's
Also,
paid for by the same people, though.
I recognize that, you know, when town meeting takes on the town budget or either of the school budgets, it's really, that's the one time that town meeting voters and the town itself is actually approving those, you know, frankly, the majority of the spending that's done. Almost everything else pales by comparison. I do agree that the debt exclusion for road maintenance, given the size of that this year, it makes sense to be kind of front and center, because that is a novel article with a pretty big price tag. So I recognize that by the time you're down to, you know, Article 15, really the first page, the bulk of the spending has been decided for the year.
Right.
And everything else is pretty much either moving things around or relatively small by comparison, if it has a financial impact at all.
So I had a few questions.
Go ahead, Terry.
Okay, so my first question is, number 25, the CMS Stabilization Fund. We have some other stabilization fund articles up in 16 and 17, and I was wondering why this one is down here.
school-related.
So this one, the one that you focused on, 25, that's an appropriation under an existing stabilization fund. 16 and 17 are the creation of new stabilization funds, and those are being, I believe that those are being advanced by the school committee, although it says finance committee here.
No,
It's Finance Committee.
Is 17?
Finance committee, okay, all right.
It's
The
Finance
finance committee is advancing the creation of those two funds.
Yes.
So 17 is a new fund, because it says appropriation.
And possibly funding.
Okay.
The next meeting.
Okay,
Creation and
okay.
Ah.
Yeah, I didn't see, okay.
Okay, my other question, there's 4 articles that I just wanted to hear like a really quick elevator speech what they're about. Number 20, 21,
Yeah.
37, and 54.
And I'm sorry, what's the question, Terry?
She wants,
Just a quick, what are they about?
Can you give
Oh,
a
what are they
very
about?
brief?
yeah.
Okay, so retirement board stipends, there was a change in legislation that allows folks serving on the retirement board who do have a big, important fiduciary job to serve for the retirement fund. The state statute changed to allow those folks to be paid a stipend from the fund, and that being able to do that requires town meeting action to accept the provisions of the statute that made the change. So that's what that's about. I don't remember what the HERO Act is.
The HEROES, it's a new tax, not exemption, it's a new tax benefit,
It's a new
relief
tax
benefit for
exemption for veterans
Yep, right.
on property taxes
Yep.
that would come, that would be spread out across all other payers of the tax levy.
It might come from the overlay if I
Oh,
heard it
yeah,
the
you're right,
first
it
time.
does. It comes from the overlay
Well,
district.
no, I think it's
Apologies.
proposed to come from the overlay. I'm looking at Anthony because
say, yeah.
that's what I heard in
Right,
the
it's
assessor's
proposed to come
office.
from the overlay
Yep,
district.
yep.
Okay, 2021, what were the other two, Terry?
37?
37, and 54.
That, SGARs are, that's rat poison.
Yep. I Googled it.
And the
yeah.
next one?
Okay, so my last one is 54. What's the difference? Is 53 the operating budget and 54 is the capital budget for sewer?
No, the sewer improvement fund is a sub-fund of the sewer fund. And town meeting authorization is required for both of those to be authorized to be spent by the sewer department. We have that every year.
You good, Terry?
Yeah, okay,
Thank you. Any other questions, comments?
The only other comment I would make in terms of grouping things together for our budget entities is Articles 22, 23, 24, which are all school committee articles. I don't know if it makes any sense to move them up under sort of the amenities building, or at least put all the school stuff together. And I'm just thinking, if we don't get to 20, then the school committee will have to come back on the second night. That's all I'm thinking. And that's the only other thing. Otherwise, I'm fine.
So you're saying after 15, you would put
Well, yeah, I would,
22,
after,
23, and 24?
yeah, after the amenities
Oh, after the
building, if
amenities.
it's really the Concord
Then
Public
Minuteman
Schools.
might
Yeah,
have
I
to
mean,
come
maybe
back.
it's after 15. That
May
could be
I
close
ask,
enough.
do we have anybody from the school committee?
Tracy's usually on, but I can't, I don't see. I don't know. Mark, can you see if they're on? Usually it's Tracy. Okay.
Okay,
Well, you
because,
also have 25 and 26 that are school-related.
But they're,
Well, those are,
those are going to be 10, well,
the 25 is really a FinCom,
yeah.
Right,
and 26 is really a town
right.
Yeah.
article.
I know, but the school committee could get questions about the Peabody property or something.
Excellent.
They could.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm sad that we don't have someone from the school committee here, because I know last year the school committee had wished that the articles had been ordered a little differently, And I had let them know that this was the meeting that they needed to attend to when the select board sets the order. But, so I don't know if they have a point of view on where we put those 3 articles that Wendy just drew attention to.
I'll see if I can text someone. If I have a phone number. Don't wait for me, though.
Okay.
Can I make a comment about 13 and 14? Just
Sure.
people maybe
Yes,
are
right.
confused
We're going to build
about
2
two.
amenity buildings.
Yep, so there are 2 articles. There will be only one. The first one sponsored by the district, and this would be if the district were to issue debt. The second sponsored by the town if the town were to issue debt. So for those who have been following this project, you will recall that the town of Carlisle is interested in paying its share through its CPC funds, and so they would be paying cash, and the town of Concord is likely to issue debt. It is somewhat problematic for the district if one of its members is paying cash and one is issuing debt. We have had this question in front of bond counsel for a couple of weeks, and the attorney that we typically work with wasn't sure of the answer, and she needed to wait to get a response from the managing partner. And I spoke with him late last Friday afternoon, and he said that while it is unusual, a member can issue the debt as long as there's an intermunicipal agreement between the 2 entities. And so we just received, maybe just as we were opening the meeting, we did receive a draft of that from bond counsel. So I think we need to keep both on the warrant as we work through this issue, because this board will need, and the district school committee will need to decide whether or not it wants to enter into an IMA for the purpose of allowing the town of Concord to issue debt.
I think we need both of them there for the additional reason that we don't know now, and we won't until Carlisle's town meeting happens, whether or not Carlisle elects to pay their portion of the amenities building cost through a CPC
Got it.
appropriation.
When is that happening,
And
Carmen? When is their town meeting?
it's before ours. It's in
It's early, I won't say it's
April or
early.
May, I can't remember
I
which.
think it's early May.
They're,
And-
they're having a Sunday with food trucks this year.
Yeah, that's what I heard.
That I remember.
And they're going to have a town funding article and CPC, with CPC going first. That's my understanding. So
Okay, so we'll
we
keep
all
them
have to
both.
hedge our bets.
We're going to
the way
keep them
we need
both.
to. Yeah.
Okay.
Right, so we'll keep them both, and then,
Okay.
you know, if Carlisle isn't funding their portion in cash, then there wouldn't be any reason for the district not to borrow the funds and then assess the debt service against both towns.
Right. If it passes. Okay. Do we have any?
Phone number? No, sorry.
Okay,
I couldn't
so-
get to it.
It looks like the Public Works Commission has a thought.
Yeah. Mr. Weber, you want to speak? Go ahead.
Yes, Sven Weber for the Public Works Commission. Just a thought on 35 and 36. Not knowing the content of 35, but speculating, it might make sense to switch these two to first potentially fund the stormwater enterprise system, and then talk about specific citizen concern around stormwater instead
good
of
idea.
doing it the other way around.
That is a good
It's a
idea.
good idea, yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you, I think that makes a lot of sense.
I do
actually.
too. I do too. So what do we, I think the only outstanding thing we have right now is, Wendy, your suggestion about moving 22, 23, and 24 immediately after the Minuteman Regional Technical School District's budget.
Yeah, and the idea there is just, if the school committee, they don't have to go across 2 different meetings.
Okay.
And that's really all.
There's no problem with that. I don't see a problem.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm hearing 2 recommendations, that being one, and the other is to switch the order of 35 and 36.
Sure. Okay,
Anything else?
no, it's all good.
Move that we adopt the town meeting warrant article order as presented and amended.
Second.
Roll call.
Ms. Sackerman?
Terry?
She's working on it.
Aye.
Ms. Hartman?
Aye.
Myself, I'm an aye. Mr. McKinnon?
Aye.
Ms. Ravelli?
Aye.
Very
And I
good.
suggest that we move back to the MCI before we finish the other town meeting
Oh,
articles.
Actually, I have two more issues for you
I
on
know,
town meeting.
yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right.
Hopefully they're
These will be
quick.
fast.
These will be fast?
They will.
Okay.
They will.
But these will be quick. Another recommendation of the Town Meeting Study Committee, and I did do a straw poll of this at a chair's breakfast recently, which met with unanimous enthusiastic approval, and that is of changing our town meeting time to begin at 6:30 with the expectation that the Select Board would make a motion, preliminary motion not to take up new business after 9:30 on the first, at least on Monday and Tuesday nights. So I would like the Select Board to consider that and make a vote to, if you're in favor of it, to make a vote to schedule the town meeting for those times on June 2nd and subsequent sessions.
You're right. The response at the chair's breakfast was unanimously in favor of this. Yeah, it was very well
And
received.
there was no concern at the schools, at the high school, about having an earlier start date. I have no idea what's going on.
I
there
don't
at
think
that
they
hour.
were
Wendy,
at-
that's
I don't
not,
think they were
that
at the
tends not to
church.
be an issue for
Okay.
us. We're usually there by 4 o'clock setting
Okay.
up,
All right,
and
fine.
so I would not expect this to be a problem in terms of interacting with the schools.
Yeah, no, I think it's fine.
And that's, normally we make the motion that we take up no new business after 10, so
Right.
it's just shifting
It's just a half an hour, yeah.
half an hour. Okay.
Good. Any other discussion?
No.
Do I have a motion?
Move to schedule the 2025 annual town meeting to begin at 6:30 PM on June 2nd, with subsequent sessions to also begin at 6:30 PM, and with the expectation of making a preliminary motion on Monday and Tuesday nights to take up no new business after 9:30 PM.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Roll call.
Ms. Ackerman?
Aye.
Ms. Hartman?
Aye.
Myself, I'm an aye. Mr. McKinnon?
Aye.
Ms. Ravelli?
Aye.
Very good. Okay. Last thing.
One more.
Last issue.
Go ahead.
Last issue is, as you know, the Town Meeting Study Committee has recommended that we employ electronic voting, also known as clickers, for voting at town meeting. And I can say that the IT department, Amalia has been fantastic, has researched it, made choices. The procurement has been finished to select a vendor. We will have 1,000 units, and the town clerk and the town chief information officer and I are all going to Westford's town meeting to watch this system in action and be well versed in it before we have to roll it out ourselves. The question that was left was, how exactly would we use these clickers at the meeting? Would you use them for every vote or something else? And since that time that the Town Meeting Study Committee was here with that recommendation for you, which you all adopted, they have made a recommendation on how to use the clickers at the meeting. And their recommendation is that the clickers be used routinely for votes on motions under articles from the warrant. And that would include a main motion under an article or a motion to amend a motion under an article. It wouldn't include preliminary motions like not taking up new business after 9:30 or motion to move the question, et cetera. It does leave us a little bit of discretion because it says routinely. So, for example, perhaps we don't need to use the clickers on the consent calendar, which normally passes unanimously. And if anyone has any doubts about anything on the consent calendar, they will have it removed from the consent calendar for full deliberation. So that's the recommendation of the Town Meeting Study Committee. I am suggesting that the Select Board make that as a motion for a rule of the meeting at the beginning of town meeting, and put it open on the floor for folks to deliberate on it and vote, and then we're done with that question for the rest of the meeting. I could certainly impose this rule myself, but it would then be, as the moderator, I do have the authority to regulate the proceedings, but it would also be open to any voter on the floor to make a motion on any particular article to use or not to use the clickers on a particular vote. And if we don't have a rule of the meeting, it could lead to us dealing with this question on multiple articles. And my view is that the community wants to have a conversation about this. We should provide them an opportunity to have a conversation about it, and we probably only need to do it once. So that's why I'm proposing that you make this motion. Normally we wouldn't be talking about a preliminary motion for town meeting this far in advance, but I think it's important for people to know, because this will be a new thing, how we plan to handle it. And so bringing this to you now and asking you to think about it, decide whether you agree that this is a good way to handle it. If you do, then we can tell people this is how we're going to handle it. And if you want it part of this conversation, make sure you're there at the beginning on the first night of town meeting so you can be part of the conversation.
Carmen, what was the vote of the town meeting study committee as far as recommending the use of clickers for routinely?
Not everybody was there. My memory is that it was 5 to 3.
5 to 3.
5 to 3.
5 to 3, and then the sixth person who was not there sent in a sort of a letter saying, I would have voted yes, but I'm not here.
Oh,
so.
okay.
Okay, so it's
So
5.
it's sort of 6 to 3. But.
Okay. Okay.
And the chair of the town meeting study committee is here if you have any questions about that vote on the recommendation.
Do I get to speak?
I just a minute, the select board is addressing this. So I have a question. I guess it's a two-parter. I'm assuming there'll still be paper ballots distributed.
Absolutely. We must have those for two reasons. One, they are our backup system.
Yes.
If something goes wrong with the clickers, we've got our paper voting slips.
Right.
And paper ballots in case they're used for a secret ballot. And the other reason is that we'll have 1,000 clickers. If we have more than 1,000 people show up for town meeting, which was not likely but could happen, so that we have to overflow into an additional space within the high school, we won't have enough clickers, and so we will need the assistant moderator in that space to have a mechanism for taking the votes there, and it will be with paper voting slips.
Okay. Yeah, and my second question was, I think you answered it, but a motion to take a secret ballot using the paper ballots would be in order pretty much any time as it normally has been?
It would be if we had an overflow space that wasn't using a clicker.
Yeah.
If we don't have an overflow space that's not using clickers, and we have a rule of the meeting that we are using clickers, and we're using the clickers on a particular vote, that is a secret ballot, so there'd be no basis for a motion. I would rule it out of order.
Okay.
So you'll allow quite a bit of deliberation on this preliminary motion right at the beginning of town meeting?
I'm going to allow that, absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
So I'm sorry, is the motion that the select board supports?
No.
That we adopt, the select board's recommending that we adopt a rule of order, is that?
No, actually, the
putting it out
motion is
there.
for the meeting to adopt the
Thank you.
rule.
Yeah, that's what I,
Right.
And
We're not-
presumably, the select
Right.
board doesn't make the motion if the select board is not in favor of the motion, but you might not be unanimously in favor of it, and you don't have to be in favor of it. You don't have to speak
Right.
in favor of it. You just have to put it on the floor.
Yes, I see this as asking town meeting to talk and decide,
Yes.
not the select board advocating,
But
we're sponsoring.
right? But
Well, but
we're not,
For town, like, in the other articles, the warrant articles, usually there's something that says the select board, you
Gives a
know, sort of gives
recommendation.
a
Yeah, it's a
recommendation.
on
So
a
is that-
standing warrant article.
Right, so is this the same?
no, it's not the same because I'll give you an example. Several years ago, we had dueling articles on the warrant with respect to the use of the landfill. One was to take $1 million to put a conservation restriction on it, and the other was to build a bus depot on it. The select board put both those articles on the warrant.
Yeah.
And, and when we had to discuss and make a recommendation on those two articles, I don't remember what we did, but I think we may have recommended one and not recommended the other. Or we may not have recommended either. And in fact, town meeting didn't pass either one of them.
I don't, yeah.
Yeah, it's, we've run around this thing, what does sponsorship mean? What does advocacy? I think sponsorship really means we're willing to put this in front of the town. Advocating is a whole separate thing. So what we're doing here is we're sponsoring in the meeting that I just described. We're putting it in front of town meeting, letting them deliberate and letting them vote. That's how I'm interpreting it.
And what would, so if we didn't do this, if we didn't put this forward, you would use clickers on the warrant articles unless somebody sort of objected? Is that?
So I would say there are probably a couple different possibilities. One is the town meeting study committee could choose to make that motion. We don't usually have a board or committee other than the select board or the finance committee making a preliminary motion. But I think in this case we probably could. So that if the select board elects not to make the motion, I think the town meeting study committee could make the motion. And if they elected not to make the motion, then I would simply propose a way that we are going to use the clickers, and people would agree or disagree on an article by article basis on how we're going to use the clickers.
Oh, God.
That's crazy.
Agree, disagree. Yeah, I'm just trying to understand that. Like, so you would have to have a vote on every, I mean, how do other towns do it? Because other towns implement clickers. And
Many other
seems to
towns have
work.
bylaws.
Okay. So the
We do
bylaw
not-
says that you
Yes.
can use clickers.
And I'm not in favor of a bylaw because it's very inflexible, and I think it's better for us to have a rule that the meeting adopts that is adaptable and flexible by us in the moment so that we can address things like equipment malfunctions or too many people showing up or Lord knows what else. But it leaves us free from being cornered by a conundrum that our bylaw hadn't thought of. And there are so many situations you cannot anticipate when you draft a bylaw.
And would we put this in our budget book? What are we calling it? I forget.
Briefing
Briefing
book.
book.
Briefing
Would we
book.
put this in the briefing book also?
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
okay,
Absolutely.
good,
The preliminary
yeah.
motion, if you vote
Oh,
to
it's a
make this
okay.
motion, it would be in the briefing book, so
Okay,
everyone will
good.
know that it's coming.
So
Right.
can we put in it that it's supported by the select board?
That's up to you.
Sponsoring it, yeah.
If we want,
Yeah.
we could take a vote.
Yeah,
We could.
that's up
Sure.
to
Yeah.
you.
And are we doing that tonight? Is that,
No,
are we trying to, we're not, okay, that's fine.
it wasn't on the
But-
agenda to vote.
Yeah, no,
We
all
are-
we're doing is, tonight is deciding whether we'll make a motion. In other words, put it on the agenda to be decided later.
Yeah, we're not,
That's exactly the right way to think about it, Mark, is that you're putting it on the agenda.
yes.
Right.
Sorry, just when you say to be decided later, to decide later whether or not we,
So, yeah,
Support it?
we typically have a session, or actually often multiple sessions, where we go through and actually review whether we're ready to make a recommendation one way or another, which does
Every article.
normally, in the past, appear in the Finance Committee report, but now I guess it'll be in the briefing book.
On every article.
On
Every-
every
yeah.
article. So all we're really doing is adding this to the list of things along with
Yeah,
the
yeah.
article.
Yeah.
no, I'm sorry for asking all these, it's
Yeah.
a little different because it's not actually an
It's-
article.
Yeah.
Right, it's,
Yeah.
I mean, you could compare it to the rule of the meeting that we normally have that holds articles open to make sure that they're funded.
Although we do put that
Well-
on as an article.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that is an article.
Kind of like the officers.
Okay,
Well,
I think we've had a
So,
discussion. Are
and
we-
actually, let me say this. You could add this. No, you can't. warrant's closed, never mind.
An article.
I thought I
We don't
saw
wanna
where you
break
were
our own
going.
rules.
Where you going with that? I was like, no,
Yeah,
can't do that.
I mean, I'm just, yeah, so my thing is, I'm trying to avoid the relitigation of, we did a survey and 83% of the people said they want clickers. We had a committee and the committee approved clickers. The committee said, let's use the clickers routinely. We went out and got the leasing of the clickers, and now we're gonna sort of relitigate, you know, in a different forum, like, hey, you know the thing that 83% of the town said they wanted? Well, let's relit. So I'm just trying to think of like, is there a way to avoid relitigating that whole thing? So that's.
Well, I guess my response to that would be that a survey isn't a town meeting, and what we're doing is we're bringing it in front of the true legislative body of the town, which is town meeting.
Those people
You know,
who-
town meeting is the chief forum that we have available to us for a public conversation about any issue we care about. And that's why we end up with citizen petitions that are advisory in nature, that bring up things that town meeting doesn't actually control, but that people want to talk about. And so I don't see it as a problem that this would be the forum where we would have this conversation, and people would have the opportunity to hear how people who feel different ways about it, and we'll have a vote, and we'll move on.
Could be a long discussion.
Yeah.
But I think I'm in support of doing it, for sure. I think it's the right thing to do.
I'm in support of bringing it in front of the town.
Yep.
I really am.
Yep.
So let me see, I think we do have some.
We have
Oh, we have
two people
hands
with their
raised.
hands
Yes.
raised on
Yeah.
Zoom.
Elizabeth Moore?
Mark Martinez was first.
Oh, Mark.
Mark?
Good evening, Mark Martinez, 66 Alfred Circle. I actually was the petitioner of Article 29 last year, the motion to adopt as the primary voting method. And my question sort of follows on, I think, points Cam was making, and that is, if the select board is going to make the motion, who's going to present the reason behind, or who's going to recommend it? And I guess my point is that I think the town meeting study committee met for 6 or 7 months. I presented, other people presented. Eric Moore has a ton of data, both extrinsic data, other towns around us, intrinsic data. As Ken mentioned, over 800 people wanted the use of clickers. And my question, I guess, is how is the good work of Eric in that committee going to be presented to the town? And I think a debate or any sort of deliberation without having all the data that, I think is the purpose of one of the purposes of the town meeting study committee. If we don't somehow capture that and present it, won't we be missing a great opportunity to inform the citizens as to all the work that's been done? And then think about the question that I've been thinking about, and that is over 850 people voted, spent the time to fill out the questionnaire. And if the committee, or if the town, I guess, or if the moderator in the town meeting itself is not going to follow the recommendations of the people who took the time to fill out those surveys, think about the question, or think about the message we are delivering to those people for future surveys. I mean, I'm one of the people who encourage people to take the survey. I spent a fair amount of time, not only at town meeting last year, but at the town meeting study committee, making presentation and presenting data. And I'm just hoping we can somehow capture that in this discussion.
Address
If
that,
I
Karen?
might, just procedurally at the meeting, we'll take up a couple of preliminary, the fire chief will come, we'll take up a couple of preliminary things like the election of the deputy town moderator and so on. Report on Article 1 is a report on who got elected in our annual town election. Article 2 is hear reports. And under hear reports, we will have a presentation from the town meeting study committee who is charged with reporting to this year's annual town meeting the results of its study and its recommendations. So we will not take up this preliminary motion by the select board until after the town meeting study has had the opportunity to present its report and its recommendations. In addition, its report, or at least the executive summary, is going to be available with its recommendation is going to be part of the briefing book. And if we don't have the space and if we aren't able to publish the whole thing with its appendices, which I don't think we will, that whole thing will be online, and there'll be a QR code so people can find the whole thing, including the survey reports and so forth. And I would have to guess that if the select board asked the town meeting study committee to please come to the microphone and say a few words about why this was its recommendation and why this recommendation is being made, that they would, of course, do that because it is their recommendation.
Right, exactly, right. Very good. It's good to remember that the Town Meeting Study Committee was charged with reporting to the town meeting, and this is exactly that opportunity to do so. So that's great. Very good.
Ms. Moore?
Hi, Elizabeth Moore, 105 Blueberry Lane. A couple of quick questions and then one comment. Carmen, you said we're renting, right? We're renting 1,000 clickers?
We are renting.
Okay, and is it for one night or multiple nights?
We are renting for all nights of the meeting.
Okay, do you consider this then to be a trial because we're not buying, or is it a trial, or is it something that will continue year to year to year?
It is a trial of this particular equipment. Our chief information officer was unwilling to make the capital investment in equipment that she didn't have any direct experience with. She wanted to make sure that it's going to work the way we need it to, and then there's a judgment that has to be made by the town on whether they would lease on an annual basis or purchase and then handle the maintenance and the rollout and so forth in-house. And some towns rent every year, and some towns own and roll out every year. So in that sense, it's a trial. Otherwise, I don't believe that it is.
Okay, and so then you would consider doing a bylaw change if this were to become permanent, correct? I mean, this would potentially be a bylaw change?
I don't think there's any need for a bylaw. I think that we can have a policy, and that whatever we vote this year and however it goes, we will incorporate that into our town meeting and traditions handbook, and that will become part of the local rules of our town meeting.
Okay, and last question. Has the town meeting study committee said that they were in favor of you going to the select board and asking for this is a jurisdiction question, asking them to make this preliminary motion? Does the town meeting study committee, have they recommended this, or was this your own personal decision? Because I think they have the right to do this, you have the right to do this, you can do it yourself, and you're in charge of the legislative body, you preside over it. A citizen can do this too, I believe, right? And then, but why would we take in the executive committee of our town government to ask this question of the legislative body? I'm kind of perplexed as to why we'd be crossing jurisdictions like this, especially when various members of the select board have publicly said that they have nothing to do with the clicker issue. Multiple public record comments saying that they don't want to be involved with it. It's the town meeting study committee reports to town meeting. You preside over that, so really that's to you and the group. But why would we be incorporating this group to make a decision that you could just simply go to them and say, hey guys, we're going to be testing this out for the next couple of days. Fill out a comment card when you leave. I don't think anybody's going to dispute you getting in front of the group and saying, let's just give this a go, give it a try. And next year we'll determine whether we're going to really buy them or not, so why would we be going through this kind of like opening up this can of non-beneficial worms on what is essentially a trial?
Okay, I think we have your question. And let me say I have certainly discussed this approach to establishing a rule of the meeting rather than the moderator imposing a new way to take votes, which is a complete departure from the way we have done it forever, almost 400 years. And in my judgment, it's something that the meeting is entitled to have a conversation about. And based on correspondence I have been getting from people on both sides of this question, I think there are different feelings about it and that people wish to have a conversation. I think I can probably guess how the conversation is going to come out. And I think, my guess is that the conversation is going to come out. Never mind, I'm not going to guess because I'm the neutral presiding over the meeting. But I don't think there was no discomfort expressed to me by the town meeting study committee. Is that a fair statement, Eric?
Eric Moore, chair of the town meeting study committee.
All right, Eric, come on up here.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're going to have to.
Hey, that's it.
Sorry about derailing your meeting.
I don't know, once.
It's important, so.
Hi, good evening. Eric Moore, chair of the town meeting study committee. I support Carmen's judgment, the moderator's judgment, to put this preliminary motion in front of the meeting. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
The question is why does it have to be from the select board?
Yeah,
Like,
Ms. Moore,
why don't you do it?
Ms. Moore, we have your question.
Okay.
Did you?
What I would say about that, this is just a procedural vehicle to
Right.
get the question in front of town meeting to have the conversation and the vote. Doesn't matter who does it. The moderator doesn't do that. I don't make motions. Because I am the presiding officer at the meeting, so therefore I don't make motions. That's part of our parliamentary procedure. Typically, preliminary motions are made either by the select board or by the finance committee. Ones that have to do with money are typically made by the finance committee. Everything else is typically made by the select board, like what time we're going to not take up new business, and this is one of those. And that's the reason that it struck me that the select board is the correct vehicle for just getting this question in front of the meeting for what the rule of the meeting is going to be.
Thank you.
Okay, we ready for a vote?
Okay.
Do you have a motion?
Yes, I move that we make a preliminary motion on the first night of the annual town meeting to adopt a rule of the meeting to use electronic voting clickers routinely for votes on motions to approve articles from the warrant as recommended by the town meeting study committee.
Second.
Any further discussion? Ms. Ackerman?
Aye.
Ms. Hartman?
Aye.
Myself, I'm an aye. Mr. McKinnon?
Aye.
Ms. Ravelli?
Aye.
Thank you.
Very good.
Okay.
Thank you, Carmen. Thank you, Eric. Dan, I'm sorry to make you wait. I thought it was going to be quick.
No. I'll try to speed it up.
Is that, are you here alone?
I
or
think
is-
I am. I was wondering about that.
Well, there are other people here, but.
No, I know that, but I didn't see Patrick. So I'm Dan Gainsborough, co-chair of the MCI Advisory Board, and happy to see you guys again. I know Shannon and company did a great job of updating you on it. I'm happy to go through that. At the same time, I'm mindful of your timing, and I can address questions, but to Shannon's point, we are fortunate tonight to have two principals from our primary consultant group, Kate and Rhiannon. So we can also spend some time just introducing you guys to that. So maybe I'll take my direction from you.
That would be great. Why don't you do that?
Okay.
That would.
So I see Rhiannon and I saw Kate. Hi. Good. Do you want to just introduce yourselves, or do you want me to? Okay. You're on mute still.
I'm happy to introduce myself, and Kate may hop back on. She has 3 wild ones running around, and so they are pulling her away from this meeting. But hopefully she'll hop back on in a few moments. Hi, everyone. My name is Rhiannon Sinclair. I am a city planner and a principal at Agency Landscape and Planning. And we're excited to be able to work with all of you on this very important project at this very important moment to reconsider the future of the MCI Concord site. Dan, I'll pass it back over to you to walk through the work in more detail.
Yeah, what I want to say is that we are, the sort of headline is we are on budget and on schedule, and I would say thanks to some Herculean efforts on Shannon and Megan and Anthony's part, because there was a couple of hiccups early on in the process, nothing substantial, and they were able to expedite things, and we are very fortunate now to have what we consider to be a first-class team. And we had a kickoff meeting last Tuesday, a week ago from tomorrow. We spent a couple of hours going through their timeline and responsibilities and making sure that everyone understood that. And then after which, they spent a couple hours doing a very detailed, along with principals, members of their entire team. So I think there was about 18 people on their side, if I did my math right, somewhere between 16 and 18. And they spent a good deal of time walking around the site. So, and what else should I tell you? Oh, we have a couple of important meetings coming up. We're going to be meeting with the Department of Transportation to sort of start to talk about that piece. And I know maybe you guys have already spoken about it, but we have also well underway with the other critical element, which is the understanding the wastewater treatment piece of it and the impacts that will have on the project. So I'm happy to answer any questions, but as I said, I'm trying to get you guys back some minutes.
So if we were to sort of say, here's this project, right? I mean, there's MCI overall, then there's sort of the project that's kind of kicked off with the consultants, right?
Mm-hmm.
What would be kind of the key deliverables, but from the consultant study perspective?
Okay, so there's probably, if I miss anything, Mark, you can correct me, but I think of it as sort of 5 big buckets. There's the community outreach piece, which is making sure that we hear from everybody. We have 96 individual stakeholder groups identified, and we have already begun to start conversations with them. So organizing that information.
We're actually doing that community outreach in this time frame, or just putting together a plan
yes.
to do it?
So
Okay.
You know what? This is a great question. So I'm gonna and thank you for bringing it, because what I wanted to say, and this is now I'm going to steal from Rhiannon. This is a sprint. So the good news is we have our team on board. The challenging news is that we have to get a whole lot of work done between now and the 30th of June.
Yeah.
And so they came in with this wonderful graphic just showing us that we're all kind of like this. And it's, in as much as we'd love in some respects for it to be a sequential kind of thing, it's serious. Everything is happening at once. And so, so one is the community outreach piece. Once we, or as we're gathering that information, which includes the piece that they began on Tuesday, which is a sort of site discovery, site evaluation, familiarizing themselves with all the information that's there. Then we start sort of in with the visioning, right? And scenario generation. And as a piece of that will involve the economic analysis, both the sort of revenue and the expense side of that, right? The municipal impacts. And then after that, we're going to we'll work on finalizing or narrowing down those individual ideas, those scenarios, and then we will start to, not as part of this effort, meaning between now and the 30th of June, but then we start to look at how do we develop zoning and land use regulations that will ensure we get what we have actually imagined. Did I forget anything critical in that?
No, I think the key takeaway, I think, in shorthand, is that this effort is meant to discover what's there and present to the community a range of options. Most of the time we talk about 3 possible scenarios of development, which will be presented to the community through the community engagement process, all by June 30th, to get a sentiment about what direction we want to take that in when we start to engage with zoning.
Yeah, so I imagine, because it's in parallel, right? You're developing
Right.
some scenarios, you're getting community outreach feedback on it, but they're not fully baked, so you're taking that input too to help you inform the scenarios. So it's sort of a little back and forth, right?
It is, and to that point, just to build on that a little bit, there's sort of it's also the kind of thing where we get closer and closer and add more and more meat onto that frame, right? And so there'll be, as part of that scenario development process, we're imagining a number of highly engaged discussions and charrettes with the town residents and other members of it. So I think to your point, if I'm understanding your question correctly, it gets closer and closer and more refined.
So Dan, you mentioned that you're already reaching out to 96 stakeholders.
Yeah, and we've had a couple of big meetings, like I think we met with the Concord Business Partnership, some big groups first.
Yep.
to start.
Go ahead.
No, that's all right.
That's fine, okay. But then you're also going to bring it down more to the ground level.
Yes.
And get more community involvement. Go ahead.
Yes, so what we did on the last, you may recall, we've organized ourselves into 3 subcommittees. The community outreach, the land use, and the governance. In our last land use meeting, what we started to do was we realized that 96 groups is an awful lot of groups, right? And on top of which, what we've begun to discover, because some have already begun to send some members to some of our meetings, it's not immediately clear that when somebody says, I'm trying to think of a good example, let's say their concerns relate to open space. If somebody, that's a good song.
I love it.
Thank you.
Wow.
My mind is back.
Really? This is back into the 70s.
If some, just be, no, we don't all use, and this happens a lot in the planning realm, we don't, when we say something about open space, it doesn't always necessarily mean exactly the same thing to folks.
Right.
And so what we're concerned about is throwing our consultants into that mix and then having them have to sort that out. So the idea was we're going to start to look at something like probably housing is really good. Affordable housing is a really good example. There are multiple groups in that, right?
Yep.
And so what we want to do is ask them a similar set of questions and also set up some guidelines sort of to begin to manage expectations. The goal is, as much as possible, to reconcile some of those different ideas before we start to get out, because coming back to your point, it's a sprint. We can't be having those wrestling matches and still stay on schedule. Does that make sense?
Yep, it does.
It does. And I think at some point, I mean, because right away you want to almost start like unconstrained, like with the visioning, right? But then at some point, and I don't know if it's by June 30th, maybe not, but you'll start to introduce sort of like the town interdependencies. What if we move public works? What if we, I mean, I'm just saying as an example, right? But, other things that are sort of not just looking at the MCI property, but looking at, some of what we've talked about, like the other,
right.
Available land and all that stuff.
That's another great example. So in that kickoff meeting, Russell,
Carlsbad.
Yeah.
thank you, who's a sort of a facilities person. I'm trying to keep everyone's name straight, but he's great. And so those, right up from the bat, it's there. I think to your point, there'll probably be an appropriate moment to begin to layer that on.
Yeah.
But yes, there's so much information coming at Rhiannon and her team at this point. It's important to kind of just sort of pace oneself, even though you're sprinting.
So what kind of information do we need to help be mindful of? I mean, the next 4 months are going to be very busy. There's going to be a lot of people interested, like, well, when are the meetings? When can I go? And, that kind of thing. So do we have information out there now around the timeline and any key dates and things like that? Just so people can get it on the calendar, if that's appropriate. I don't even know if we're ready for that
No,
yet.
I think that's another great question, Wendy. And I think because the only way this works is if we all, and it's Carrie and all of her folks, it's all of us. We need to be, we've asked them to say, what do you need from us and when? Because if it is a sprint, even if we understand that, hey, you know what, normally when you'd love to have 2 weeks for this, well, guess what? You've got 3 days for it.
Right.
Hopefully that won't happen much, but that kind of, I think that's what your point is.
It
and that's,
is, yeah.
Yeah, that's what we're trying to do. We haven't, there's some of it in the original timeline that we put together at a really high level. We had some of that, but now that Rhiannon and her team, they're going to be doing a lot of driving of the bus. They're going to say, here's what we need. and here's when we need it.
Yep.
So they brought in a great tool where we started to, I think, to begin to get at that, which was really the timeline overlaid with responsibilities, respective responsibilities. And we went back, and there's sort of like different elements of that. There's like a consulting piece of it or informing piece of it, and then there's sort of a maybe decision-making piece of it.
Yeah, yeah.
But I just want to kind of echo what Wendy just said, which is the sooner we know dates that the public will be asked to come and give input, the better. Because remember, this is going to be right after the 250th while we're doing town meeting, and people are going to be very busy. Yep. So the sooner we can get dates nailed down so people can put it on their calendar, the better that would be.
That makes perfect sense. And I think Rhiannon heard it. She just nodded. That's a good.
Good.
Loud and clear. Yes, we're meeting with the engagement subcommittee tomorrow around lunchtime, and so are going to be sharing a little bit more about what we imagine the engagement strategy is. And once we get confirmation of that, we're going to hit the ground running on website and identifying those dates and starting to move forward with broader public engagement.
Very good.
Yeah, I would make this comment too, because I know there's a lot of folks that are listening to this meeting that are running committees of their own. If you're looking to schedule something from the community, it would really be helpful in this effort to try to make sure that the dates are put on the town calendar early. And if you see a public engagement session for MCI on that, please try to, work around that, because I think these are conversations that are best had by the community as a whole. And if we can do ourselves a favor of trying to stay out of, really have that conversation when it needs, because we are on a tight timeline to get this particular work done. So we'll be reiterating that at the chair's breakfast and so forth. But as people are looking around the room, looking at who's online, we'll go with what's published already and then try and put a stake in the ground about dates for the MCI meetings, and hopefully we can hold them, recognizing what a complicated spring it is.
Yeah,
And Mark, we might have to help.
Yes.
I mean,
think
there's a
that is
lot
one
of
the
stuff
places
going
we're
on
gonna
in
have to
town,
help.
and if this is the town's priority, we might
Yep.
be able to help with getting other committees to just
To
take a
move
bye,
things. Yeah.
right? Let's help you out and figure out how to get you the quality information that you need.
So that's under design right now. I know Rhiannon and her team are working very hard on it. And watch the next couple of both the public engagement meetings and also the main meetings of the MCI Advisory Board to stay up to date on that, because that calendar will get built in the next couple of weeks.
Good. You got questions?
So now you also mentioned that you're working with, I think you said DOT?
Yes.
Okay, can you tell us a little bit more about those conversations?
Yeah, that's really our governance, legal and governance group deserves a lot of credit. That's Elizabeth Aker-Moore, and Lee Smith, who pushed the issue to get in front and make sure that we're never very far from their mind. And so the meeting is, if I have it correct, the meeting is set up for the 17th.
Yeah.
And we will be, myself and Mark, you're going to be there?
I think we thought that, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then I know Megan's going to be there. So that's really our first opportunity after that public meeting that they did to
Yes.
really dig into it and understand.
Great.
They obviously operate at a little bit different speed, but I would think we'd also have.
You think?
That said, though, we have heard that the Department of Transportation has actually named their project manager for the Rotary redesign work. And so we're primarily supporting town staff, the town engineer, and the Public Works Department in their efforts to work with the Department of Transportation and the existing transportation planners, so that we're hoping that we can get that technical work started and underway and understand at least the outlines of where that project is. And DOT is committed to quarterly meetings for us, so that gives you an idea of what they consider a fast pace. But we'll take it.
Yeah. So, Dan, the other thing I know we talked about earlier was right now Junction Village, which is the 13, 14 acres right to the south of MCI parcel, is deed restricted to affordable housing. Is any work being done to relax that deed restriction so that that parcel can in fact be integrated with the MCI parcel?
Short answer is not yet.
Yeah.
Isn't that something we
Well,
want to do?
it's on yes, but it was, given the things that we needed to do to get the planning set up,
Yep.
it was, I mean, it's on the horizon, but not yet. Because we need legislative action for that, and it's further down the road in the actually we want to develop it.
I
So the
understand.
judgment was that we didn't think that we knew what we wanted to ask for, or, be prepared to offer in exchange for, please give us this deed restriction. So we simply haven't done it yet.
So some of the scenarios then won't be
Right.
taken into account the fact that we might in fact.
Oh,
You
No,
could.
they would.
You absolutely.
Will they or
We'll-
won't they?
We'll
We
assume
can.
that we can,
You will.
yeah.
Okay.
can.
Okay, so then I'm misinterpreting.
We assume that we'll do that, but
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, good. That's all I wanted to know. So
Yeah, I mean,
scenarios will include that
I think it's a great question, Mary.
possibility.
I think the reality is, to Mark's earlier point about this pace at which DOT works, they do best, in my opinion,
Yeah.
previous experience, they do best when they have something very concrete in front of them.
Okay.
Again, no puns intended. But, that's not going to quite happen. So what we're going to do, and Rhiannon and I haven't discussed this in detail, or as a committee we haven't, but we're going to have to make we're going to have to sort of give some different directions and options. It's just like the wastewater thing. We
Got
don't
it.
know exact capacity of that. So we're going to have to make some assumptions.
Right.
And say, well, what happens if it's this? What happens if it's that?
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? We have a question. Diane? Diane, do you want to ask a question, comment?
Yeah, I'm trying to unmute, hold on. Hi.
You're unmuted.
Dan and everybody, thank you for all your hard work on all of this. It's pretty impressive. The last time we had a big meeting, we were told, well, this is years away. So this isn't a rush, we're just gonna take our time. And now we're hearing tonight, and I think obviously for good reason, we're hearing tonight, well, we've gotta go fast, this is gonna be quick, we don't have a lot of time. Can you explain to people who have not been embedded in the decision-making why that change of pace has occurred, and the degree to which we feel that this is going to be a productive change for the town? Thank you.
Yeah, no, that is a
great
very good question. And I think there's a little bit let's see if I can explain this and make some sense of it. There's sort of two different timelines. There's the timelines that's associated with the funding that we're getting from the state, which is really driving that need to get through those two or three planning steps that I talked about. And then there's the project itself. So that's, in a nutshell, it's really the funding from the state that's driving this sort of accelerated pace on the scenario generation. We have a second piece of that, which is that follows after the 30th, which will really dig deep into the zoning and the land use piece. And so that will last longer. The timeline that was presented at the league meeting hasn't changed in terms of when actual activity on construction activity, for example, would start to happen on the site. It's just really getting us to the starting blocks. Does that answer?
Thank you so much. I presumed it was all around using the state money and resources while we have them, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Diane.
That's exactly correct.
Any other comments, questions? Well, thank you, Rhiannon, for coming to our meeting tonight, and thank you, Dan.
Welcome.
Thank you very,
Yes,
very
thank you.
helpful.
So, great update.
I'll be back.
Right, good.
Yes, you will.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
You too.
Thanks.
Okay.
We are right on schedule.
Are we really?
See? Thank you, Dan. Okay, so now we're going to talk about our initial conversations around the rewrite of APP 10. So, Cameron,
Yes.
you're on.
Okay, so I've put together a few slides to help facilitate this discussion. If we just want to move to the background page, which is the next slide here. So So to start off, I think as it was mentioned earlier today, right, we have a very active community. We have, by my count on the website, 63 committees. I'm not sure, maybe plus or minus one or two, but we're really grateful and lucky that we have such involvement, right? So the APP 10, the Administrative Policy and Procedure 10, right, is concerning the appointment of members to boards, committees, and task forces. We'll come back to that because it's not always, I think, abundantly clear which one's which and whether or not we need to define that or not. And look, I mean, there's been some questions raised, right, around the policy and around the policy's application. And so I think the purpose today, in my mind, is not to make any sort of like formal decision on the rewrite of it, but it's to have a discussion. It's to get some feedback from within the select board here on, kind of what are the most important things that we want to address. And I think it's really to sort of, frankly, give me some guidance so that I could go back and then take a cut at, sort of some edits and some updates to the policy. So if people are okay with that as kind of the guideline and sort of the guardrails for the discussion, if you go to the next slide, we don't have to, this isn't for a lot of debate, but just a couple of things to sort of note, right? So I just want to make sure, because there was some back and forth even around what policy we were referring to.
Yeah,
So I think we just need to make sure there is a version that was updated November 22nd, 2021. Okay, so I was not looking at that because I have a handbook, even though the handbook says it was updated in October of 23, the policy is actually from 2012. If you Google it, the first two searches, one you get one policy, one you get the other. So I think we just need to clean that up and make sure. And I'm going to operate under, we're starting with the November 22nd, 2021 policy, and let's, work off of that one. Let's just make sure we have it updated.
For the record, the committee handbook does have the right one in it now.
It does
The
have it now.
online version,
Okay.
the online version is correct.
The online, okay,
Yes.
right.
Oh, good.
Yeah, but if you, there's
I know,
different
just one-
things when you
let's
even
just
Google
clarify.
it that,
I know.
you get one, so it's just,
Yeah.
there still seems to be two versions out there. Anyways, and then the second thing is the policy starts by saying it's distributed to all committee, board, and task force chairs. But I think, do we actually give it to all committee members?
I don't know. I think
Sorry,
all our
just-
policies say they go to all the chairs.
The committee handbook is given to everyone when
Okay.
they're appointed to a committee.
Of which,
When
so
they go-
everyone.
When they
okay.
go to be sworn in.
Got it. All right. So that's my first thing is just the distribution.
Yeah.
Make sure that
Yep.
we have it
It is,
distributed
yep.
to everybody. Okay, great. So let's, moving quickly off of that,
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So I think, I do remember revising it in the fall of '23. I might be remembering it wrong, but I think we should check the minutes and see if we did revise it then, and which version is in the handbook anyway, the 21 or the 23?
21. Well, the
Okay.
online version. Let me just say that. I'll qualify
Yeah, I
again.
mean,
'cause-
I think we need to allow for the possibility
Yeah.
that somebody who gets a physical copy gets whatever is current when they get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, and
Yes.
then it can be updated later. But I would like to propose that we agree that the page on the website, which is called Administrative Policies and Procedures and has a list of all of them, should link to the current one. Ideally, it should be the only one that's out there.
Yes.
But, and that points to the 2021 version right now.
But I'm wondering, Terry has the recollection that we did in fact revise it in 2023, so I think we should look into that.
Should check.
Well,
Yeah.
Yep.
We should check. Yeah, all I'm saying, yes.
should check.
We should take away and make sure that.
We should get the most recent one up on the web in the
On
book.
web, on all versions. Because
Exactly.
if you
So
do a
let's-
Google search, that you don't get two different versions.
So let's first find out what the most recent version is.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I-
So then if we go to the document scope, this is just a list of the scope. I'm not going to read every word, but these are the sections
Yep.
that are in it. I think there's a few areas for discussion in the first 5 sections. I think the biggest one, and the one we'll probably have the most discussion around, is section 7, which is the appointment policy and procedures. So there may be some other things in, the participation section or the powers and duties section, but we'll probably end up spending more of our time on section 7. So with that, going to the next slide, maybe sort of talking about just a few of the, and I want feedback on this, because this is certainly just some ideas that I came up with, sort of some themes that we want to talk about. So one is, how do we make sure we have a consistent, a publicized, and a simple approach to applying for committee consideration? Because I think, look, it says, often in some places just sort of like, hey, you can fill out a green card, right? But there are other places where it talks about, hey, the select board should solicit people, should, invite. It doesn't say you have to submit a green card, right? It says like that's one way that you can do it, but there's other ways that the board can sort of go out and look for members.
But you have to have a green card on file to be considered. Yes.
I'm not sure the policy says.
Well, then it should.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. That's why I'm having,
Okay.
again, this is not.
Listed, but yeah.
Okay.
It maybe should be a little clearer if we want to. So if that's something we want, is to just say, look, we will only take people if they have filed a,
That's a
card for
simple
submission.
statement. That's a very direct statement, and that's a simple statement. Yep.
Okay.
So this is maybe a minor point, but we eliminated the term green card after
Right.
an immigrant complained and said she was offended and confused, and we changed it to volunteer card. So I think that all of our documents should be consistently saying volunteer card.
Yes.
Perfect, great. We will make sure that is.
See, I think what we're saying now, which is that everybody who's going to be appointed, either by the town manager, the moderator, or the select board, has to fill out a volunteer card. That's different than your first bullet, because you're saying clear expectations on how applicants will be considered, which is a much broader topic.
You're right. There's 2 things in there. One is to applying for committee consideration, and then the second part of that is expectation on how applications will be considered.
That's
So
a
you're
whole-
right, there are 2
yeah,
pieces.
whole broader- yeah.
So the first piece is the sort of, okay, how do we have an approach for applying,
Right.
right?
What's the paper?
Yep, and making sure that there's, the volunteer card. And then secondly is how applications will be considered.
That's big.
Yes.
That's a big topic.
Yes.
Yep.
Do you have thoughts on it, or?
Well, it depends what committee and where you are. Is it a
Yeah.
new committee, an old committee, a reappointment?
To me, that's the meat of what
Yeah.
that's the problem to be solved. It's back to your earlier slide.
Yeah, I'm sensitive to the fact that most of the time, what we're doing is trying to fill slots that are
Right.
wide open.
Right.
And then occasionally there's, it's just like at town meeting, occasionally there's a high interest article that everybody wants to have a say about. And then, but most of the time, most of the articles are, we're looking to, move them through. And so, and that goes back to, we need to have a certain amount of flexibility and one of the reasons why select board members have to, go out and find people is because these roles, don't fill themselves most of the time. So I'm concerned that we're going to spend a lot of time writing or rewriting a policy for admittedly an important case, but one that is far less common than the general situation, which is that we're trying to find thoughtful people to fill necessary roles that we've created.
But I think as we go through this process, we'll get some clarification, and because I think even for the ones where we're trying to recruit an opening on an existing one, having the discussion is going to help, because I've seen different committees do things differently, and we should clarify our role in it. And, you know, to the points earlier about how do we recruit new people, there's probably some opportunities out there for us in that discussion as well.
Right, and I think that there are some things about the mechanics of how the volunteer card database works.
That could be improved.
I mean,
we're working on it, I think.
It's advanced from the shoebox full of index cards phase that it used to be some years ago, but not
many years.
not many years ago, and maybe not as much as some of us would hope.
Right.
Yeah. And I wonder, sort of the volunteer card, I mean, if you say, look, that's sort of the book of record, right?
Yeah, it is,
okay. Then perhaps, you know, if somebody does submit a volunteer card, we should say, you know, at a minimum, we'll tell them what the disposition of their application is.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Because I think there's some of it is sort of like, I hear from people sometimes say, hey, I said I volunteered. And it's actually not crystal clear what, so yes, I'm sure you did. I'm sure they did. But did they submit a volunteer card? Maybe not. Maybe it was an email, maybe it was a discussion. And then it gets, frankly, a little murky sometimes, like, okay, well, but nobody got back to me.
Right.
Well, and that's, we should do better, but it's also a little bit sort of unclear. Do you know what I mean? Like, did somebody really volunteer?
Well,
I think
everyone
people
has
need to
one.
understand that when they submit a volunteer card, they're putting their name in.
Yes.
Right? But, and it's kind of in a file, and then when we go to
Well, actually, it's pretty actively forwarded to relevant committees. So I've received many of them, and they go to the chairs typically of each committee. And it is somewhat up to the chair to follow up with that individual. I've had one committee that there was no follow-up, and I had to ask, did you follow up? Oh, no, I've been really busy. It's been a tough summer. I said, well, maybe you should follow up. Unfortunately, that person went to another committee, which was okay. But there is some active forwarding of those volunteer cards, so people shouldn't assume they're not.
Yeah, that's true.
So it's a little hard. And I actually don't know if, when someone gets on a committee, is that database updated? Because I don't know if it is. I assume it probably is.
I guess what I'm hearing is, how do we manage the paperwork of the cards, okay?
Yeah.
And we can do work there. And how do we respond? And but then I think the meat of where you're going is, how do we decide how to?
Yeah, ultimately, there's a piece on how do we decide. But I think there's almost, I mean, I think we can talk about too, like, you know, it's a policy, right? And so sometimes in the policy, it's not, you're not writing a law. And so you can say, hey, look, you know, we also would expect that people will, anyone who gets, who volunteers will be responded to, and, you know, we'll kind of let them know the sort of outcome or disposition of their application.
Yeah.
And specify who's going to do that.
Yeah.
Right, and I feel like just because we're talking about this and people may be paying attention, that there is on the town website, under how do I volunteer, town or committee board member, that brings anyone who's interested to a vacancies of member positions page, which the town staff tries to maintain, which lists the vacancies to, you know, to the best that we are aware of them, for various committees that people can volunteer for.
Very good.
And there's also on that page a link to an electronic volunteer card where if someone fills that out, they are presented with a list of all the committees that are currently active, and they can check the ones they're interested in, and that does drive a notification to the chairperson of that committee, as well as the select board liaison, that somebody is trying to volunteer for that.
Just a plug. We all should be looking at that database, what's open, and correcting it if it's not. I know I asked you guys to do that, but.
And it is a standing request at the chair's breakfast, which people may also not always be aware of, that when the chairperson of a committee discovers that there's either going to be a vacancy because somebody's indicated that they want to move on, or they have a vacancy, we usually ask them to review that and be in touch with the town manager's office as well to make sure that that's captured in there. So there is a lot of manual steps in here. You know, one would love to have some perfect automated system that captures all of that, but the fact of the matter is that that's a relatively complicated database for to put together.
Yep. Yep. Okay.
And keep updated, more importantly.
Yeah, no, that's helpful, and that's helpful feedback. So, can we, just the second bullet point, you know, appointing people to committees, which again, we'll talk about sort of the, you know, the methodology there, but there's also a piece on extending people to additional terms. So, and I don't, like, so oftentimes it sort of comes as, like, do we publicize, hey, here's a term that's expiring, are other people interested, or do we just sort of,
I mean,
sometimes it, you know, and I see this too in the ones that I'm leaving, like, it almost feels like there's sort of just a rollover, like, hey, here's somebody they're gonna stay on.
Well,
No, I'm just curious, like, do we,
I mean, every committee should be talking about who's on and who's rolling off and who's coming in, because most committees themselves are actively recruiting, and then that's when they're usually going to call us to also say, I want some help or I not want some help. But I think it's pretty, today we approved someone who got an extra term, an additional term, and it was a very unusual situation, which I can go into those details if you want, but it really is the exception. Of that committee, I had several conversations with the chair over the course of the last year with the difficulty of recruiting someone, and in this committee, there's an associate member and a full-time member, and in this case, the associate member, which normally becomes a full-time member, did not want to become a full-time member. So this person actually volunteered to take on another term if that would help the town. And I'm like, it absolutely would, because it's a very difficult position to recruit for. So that's the kind of exceptions.
Yeah. Also, I don't know where this is written down exactly, but it has been the town tradition that people are encouraged, let's say, to serve 2 terms on whatever board committee they're on, and then let somebody else go.
Right.
So with the idea being that creates usually a fairly good overlap of experience as people come up to speed. Most of the terms, not all of them, but most of the terms are 3 years, like our terms here. And so we have that, let's call it convention, if not actual policy.
Right.
I'm going to interrupt us for a minute. I see that you're standing at the podium. Do you have a brief comment that you want to add
Yes,
to our
very
deliberation? Very good. Go ahead.
I'm Jim Sherblum, 199 Park Lane, and I spent most of my career in organizational design as a venture capitalist and entrepreneur. It seemed to me if you have the system we're describing and need 400 people to volunteer, you're always going to have 10 or 15% openings, just by the nature of finding people, connect them at the right time. In this situation, you would almost always be better off to create a pool, a permanent returning pool of about 1,000 candidates you're drawing from for the 400. And to do that, you need a nominating committee. You need some group that it's a full-time job, as the committee is, to forward nominations for the consideration of the governing board, of the select board. So I just listening to this, I'm going, you've got to find a solution that's going to be sustainable.
Yeah.
And I think a nominating committee might be the long-term solution. It won't deal with your issue tonight, but it could help you move the right way.
Thank you.
It's interesting. I thought we were elected to the nominating committee.
I know, I thought we're the nominating committee.
yeah.
Thank you. That was very helpful.
I hadn't actually framed it that
There
way.
you go.
Yeah,
We're done. Let's just set up another committee.
We got it all figured out. Yeah, but so it's interesting though on the point of like, so Mark, you mentioned on the point of like people going over to a second term.
Yep.
Right. So like, I mean, just gonna hypothetical, and I do not have an example of this, but hypothetical, so okay, somebody's term is ending.
Yep.
Somebody else wants to be on that committee.
Yep.
Well,
Does
that's different.
does the new person have precedence or preference, or does the person who's in the existing thing and says I want to stay on have preference, or is it just up to the like, do you know what I'm saying?
Never
Like,
thought
'cause-
about it.
Yeah,
Never
sort of
thought-
like,
yeah.
oh, hey, so should we let this new person in, or do we keep the old person?
Well, I think in this
I'll-
particular situation, I think the reason we agreed, at least I agreed, to let Teo stay is because he's got the expertise in a very, very demanding
Yeah.
board, a very important board. I mean, they're all important, but, and we've got some 40Bs coming online. So a brand-new person coming in, to me, trying to fill the boards with the most capable people would not be appropriate.
But I'll comment on it in the sort of, I would call it the more normal case that I've seen across a number of committees, which is that you tend to have, the chair becomes aware when somebody has volunteered, and normally around this time of year, which is the lead up to town meeting, a discussion starts to happen about who's rolling off, meaning finishing 2 terms and therefore expected to not re-up. If the people who are finishing their first term are interested in continuing, and there's an ongoing discussion in almost every committee about whether or not anyone who's currently serving because of life circumstances or whatever may or may not be able to continue to serve. And so the, chair people, my observation is, are usually thrilled to get a volunteer. And that actually creates the opportunity for somebody who may be feeling like they want to take another opportunity or move along to do that. So again, let's be careful what case we're really solving for.
That's right.
I think that 80% of the time we're in a scarcity mode in terms of finding volunteers, and then there's a small number of cases in which maybe there's more interest than we have slots.
And I have seen that too. I mean, I've referred people to committees, and it's like, no, we already asked, and the committee's full for the next year, so come back next year. It's usually what happens, where there's a message or look for another committee. But I think, Cameron, to your point about should someone take a second 3-year term, often they do. There's some committees where you really want that, right? The light board, you absolutely need that kind of continuity of the expertise, but, not every committee, I think, has to be that way, but I think it's
depends
usually
on
the
committee.
expectation
And what's
that people
going
will
on.
stay, right? Right.
In that domain.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, well, thanks. I mean, it's good feedback.
I think your point, but I was just going to say that your point, themes for discussion is a good list of some of the things that come up in issues. And I do think that the one about, what's the difference between a task force and a board or committee? Boards and committees, in my mind, are synonyms. They just happen to have different names depending on how the charge was written, and whether they're in the charter, and how hard it is to change, and what rolls off the tongue. But task forces, our procedure has typically been to use the term task force when we're looking at something which is not going to be repeated. So normally we're looking to staff up a task force once, get a piece of work done, have them turn in a report or recommendation or something, and then dissolve that group or absorb that work into some other piece. So that is a distinct, and emphasizing what I think Mary mentioned earlier, which is usually we're focused on a specific piece of advice or issue that needs to be addressed. Some of those last a long time, like 2229 Main Street, and some of them take considerably less time, like fiber broadband completion or personnel study.
The solar task force.
The solar task force. And, the other thing that I'd say is the task forces tend to require some very specific skills. So whether it was broadband, you want someone with some expertise, or 2229 in particular had some very precise requirements in it for expertise on the committee.
Terry, what were you going to say?
Terry was.
Terry?
No, I wasn't going to say anything, sorry.
Okay.
Just listening.
Okay.
So maybe I'll take us to the next, I mean, so I think we've covered, not all of these, but I think, if I
Okay.
take us to the next couple slides here,
Go
just.
back for,
Oh, go ahead,
I just
Mary.
want to
Go ahead.
comment on the last bullet
Yeah.
you've got here.
No, that's fine. If you want to go back.
Yeah, go back. It says here, diverse and inclusive, broad community representation, goal to be balanced across multiple dimensions, right?
Yep.
I guess when I read that, I had two thoughts. One is what dimensions, right? Or, is it age, is it neighborhood, is it income, is it your political
Yes.
persuasion?
I was like, the reason I didn't write all that down, because I'm like, it's almost a discussion, right?
Right,
Because it
right.
is all of the demographic
Yes.
dimensions.
Yes.
I think in some cases, it is actually also a balance of like thoughts. And I mean, sometimes you want to get different.
Diverse views.
Different
You
views,
absolutely,
right?
you absolutely do. Yep.
And that's hard to sort of put in a policy, but there is a little bit of like, I'm not sure how to, sort of like, you want a diversity of just thinking, right, somehow.
You do, and I agree.
Sometimes we have
Really.
issues where you kind of, you talk to people, they're like, well, I'm on this side of the issue, I'm on this side of the issue. Well, we don't want a committee where everyone's on one side of the issue.
You're right. Well,
But I don't know how to put that in a policy necessarily.
Well, okay, let me just say a few things about that before I get to my second point. The first thing is that you're right. Research really does show that better decisions are made if you have a diverse group.
Yes.
To a point.
Yes.
If it gets too diverse, then it just becomes disruptive and you don't get any work done. And that's actually been shown with research. But I guess my other thing is if you're going to do that, then wouldn't you want to know the dimensions of the 400 people that are serving now?
I think that we tend to.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes, I mean, I think we talked about that in one of the previous
So
meetings.
how would you do that?
So I think there's some things you can do. I mean, the hard part is that some of it is, so there's some things you can do. So there's probably some demographics, right, that you can understand based on just, people's names, and you can
Right.
get the town database and see, where they
Some.
live or how old they are or those kinds of things.
But the softer ones, like you're talking about.
There's some things that
like-
are harder
Yes.
to define in like a database, right?
Yes.
And so
Yeah,
that
you're not gonna get
becomes
them.
more of a judgment. I mean, it
Right.
becomes harder to say, hey, by formula or by definition, look, we know this is where everybody stands on this issue or something. I mean, you're going to have, there's parts of it that are harder to, so the demographic data, I think you can do and say, look.
The harder stuff, I know. It's just that if we're going to bring up diversity of opinion about an issue, and we need to know what the current 400 people, in a given committee, where does it stand? How are we going to find that out?
Well, I think the container for that is the committee charge.
Right.
Because it doesn't matter really whether Committee A relative to Committee B looks similar or different, because they're not working on the same thing.
Right.
It's within a given committee,
Right.
we need to craft something which hopefully is going to lead to the outcome that's related to the goals of that
Right,
committee and group. So some of them need to be prepared to take in a very broad range of subjects or lots of applications. Some of the boards like, ZBA and things like that have to, or NRC have to have some pretty deep knowledge of some administrative codes that they're doing. Others are, need a different type of skill set or experience in order to be effective. Some, I'm thinking climate action, for example. What we're looking for there is advancement of some general goals that are typically not associated with a lot of legislation or rules. And so I think what my point, just my point is that I think that we should be addressing goals about diversity and inclusivity within the structure that sets up the individual board committee or task force based on what the goals are for that board committee or task force.
So let's hypothetically, we're setting up a new committee to look at sustainability. Okay. So then I think let me make sure I understand what you're proposing. We'd say in the membership here, we should have some people that are strong advocates and there's some people that are skeptics. Is that what you're saying? As far as diversity of opinion, or are we?
I think we'd have to understand a little, if we're let's say in the context, we have some sustainability goals, which the town does. If we're looking for that sustainability committee to accomplish or make progress in that goals, then I'd be focused on people who can get stuff done.
Well, and their
Well,
background and
you know,
expertise
and
and what they're, right.
And also, if we've already set the goals, we don't necessarily
I think you're going
want.
someplace else. I
Well,
think
no,
you're
not
trying-
completely, but not entirely. I mean, not like 180 degrees different, but so
Yeah.
use the sustainability example. I mean,
Yeah.
it is hard because if it gets a bit nuanced, right? I mean, I'm not sure I would say, hey, I have a sustainability task force. I want a bunch of people who are against what the task force is
Right,
trying to do.
right,
Yeah,
right,
exactly.
Right,
But,
exactly.
but you might want some people who are sort of, hey, you know what? I'm actually really concerned about what the cost of that would
Exactly.
be. And so I do want some people who are like, oh, wait a second, right? You know, there's some folks who might say, hey, look, I'm for this almost no matter what it costs.
Yes.
There's other people who might say, hey, I'm for it, but within the envelope of, you know, of what this is going to mean for us from an economic
I think
standpoint.
that's a good
So,
example.
so it's that kind of thing. So yes, I
Right.
don't want to set up something that's going to
Right,
like.
which is what I was referring to when I said, you know, the dimensions of diversity and inclusivity. You
Yep.
kind of have to think about where that, you know, what axis is that
Correct.
expressed along.
Okay, good.
You don't want to
Yeah.
bias.
That was a good.
And that is why I wrote it vaguely, because I was like, if I
Right.
start trying to write it all down.
Yeah, and my point is that, my broader point, though, is that it's not something that I think lands very nicely in the policy, except for in a broad statement like
Yes.
the one you're making.
Yes.
But does need to be refined in the charge or the goals of the,
Yeah.
I
of
agree
this
with what you just
specific
said.
committee.
Yeah.
I agree with what you just said.
That's good.
Yes, yes. So that's helpful distinction. Okay, so let me I get two more slides here. So, and some of it we will have talked about, but if we go to the next page, there was just a couple of things in the first sections. So again, we sort of talked about this, but it's intended to cover all committees, boards, commissions, and task forces. Do we need to treat them any differently in terms of how we appoint people or think about that?
Goes back
Maybe
to-
not, but I
Well-
just wanted to double check.
We don't have a choice in some cases because, as we talked about last week when we talked about the personnel board,
Yep.
these, you know, or we look at the, you know, Historic Districts Commission or Historical Commission or some of these boards come into existence with, you know, laws that determine how they get set up. But beyond that, I think that our sort of recruitment and staffing policy should be as similar as we can get away with based on the restrictions that may exist in laws.
And regardless of all of these, they all typically do have some kind of membership criteria behind them, to your point earlier, Myrna.
Okay. I mean, that's helpful. The second piece I
Yeah.
had here was, it says committee, you know, this is just in the policy, right, that I
Yeah.
noticed, right?
Yeah, I read it.
Committees may be called upon in dealing with other agencies. When doing so, they shall take positions on all issues consistent with the views of the select board and town manager.
Right.
How does that work? I'm just asking a question. How does that work in practice? Does, like, select
Some
board and town
examples.
manager?
Yeah, what are some examples?
Well,
So
so
isn't
one of the things that might not be obvious is that some committees are appointed by the select board and others are appointed by the town manager. So I think that if we substituted appointing authority there, that would
Okay.
help,
Yeah.
Yep,
rather
Yep.
than,
that's helpful.
Yeah.
you know, oh, they're going out and talking to the select board and talking to the town
Well,
Well,
manager.
that's, I mean, the way it reads is
Yeah.
almost like,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah,
did
just
you get-
appointing
Right.
authority.
So appointing authority helps clarify that, and then after that, the expectation is that if representing the town outside the town, you know, for in one of these regional or state situations, that person who's doing that representation communicates with, you know, either with the select board through their liaison or with the town manager about what the issue is, and then,
Right.
you know, so an example, maybe not a great example, but the only one I can think of at the moment is when I brought the letter, you know, that from the MBTA Advisory Board, which is something that I sit on, just whether we wanted to support the, you know, some project that they were doing to the board, and said, you know, you guys okay with me going off and taking this position on behalf of the board?
Right.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, no, because it's just, consistent with the views of the select board, we may not always have the same.
Yeah, I'm not sure why that, I don't know what section that came out of, but I'm not sure why that's in the appointing policy at all, but okay.
When you say we may not always have, you mean we as a group?
We as the select, so
what you're saying.
I just see a situation potentially, right, where, hey, look, okay, I'm on this committee, all right, I'm the liaison, right? Oh, we're gonna go meet with the state. Yeah, do what I think.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, you might not all agree with that.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So it might just need a little bit of clarification in the policy,
good.
that's all.
That's
Just,
good.
you know,
Yep.
that
Yep.
If
Great.
we're gonna do that, let's make sure that we're
Okay,
Yeah.
that sounds good.
consistent. Okay, the last piece on this page, committee members should attend town government coordination meetings in September and December.
This is a good thing that you raised,
Is-
because we took it off the town meeting calendar this year. I mean, and this is something that comes up every single year. What's the value of the coordination meeting? And maybe we should take this
We just
offline
take
and
it out
talk
of the
about
policy.
it.
Yeah, okay.
I think we should.
All right, that's
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
I'm good with that.
Me too.
I'm good with that.
Yeah.
Okay, so then the section 7.
Actually, I think it should just say something like annual meetings or something.
Yeah.
Because December, we took that one off, but the one in September, I think, is the town clerk who goes through all the ethics and open meeting law and everything.
But that's not coordination, that's training. That's our annual ethics
training,
and.
Terry,
Training.
I think the reference there is to, and Mark will remember, the meetings that we
Capital.
had in the, really that, I think out of the high school construction
Yeah.
project in
Oh.
the 2010s, and I think
Yeah.
we stopped in 2016 or
Yeah.
17.
Okay. so
I mean,
this
we
is
can have a
way
more
out.
general, we can just have more
Okay.
general, like, hey, you
Yeah.
should, you should try to check
No.
in, come to other meetings.
I mean, this reference to town meeting and public hearings there, which is fine,
Yeah,
but the
they're
coordination one,
There used to be a meeting in September called the coordination meeting, which was basically all the major boards with some kind of a preview of what they were working on that they thought might end up in the town meeting agenda. And so that was kind of a preview of town meeting. So, and that was a pretty long-standing practice for a number of years. And so it's not surprising that it shows up here, but it's also not practiced anymore.
While I'm thinking of it, I just thought of this. Somewhere in here, I think we should write something about attending chairs' breakfasts is an important
Yeah.
part
Okay.
of
responsibility.
responsibility.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Especially.
Maybe that's in
We
the-
could put words around the benefit of that, but that
Yeah.
should be something that is a
Maybe
priority.
that's the committee handbook and
Yeah.
rules. This is about.
Yeah. Okay.
Good. All right, the last slide here really is, we could probably spend 5 minutes or 5 hours on, so just to be,
Yeah.
to be honest, right? So let me at least sort of cover it, and then we can take
Yep.
some feedback here, and then
Yep.
decide if you want to give me some more written feedback as well. So this was just the subsections of this section 7, right? On the
Yep.
appointment policy and procedures. So the first section is about developing a pool of interested candidates. You know, to me, it's a question of like, do we want to, how do we want to publicize openings, or are there specific things we want to do to enlarge the pool of interested candidates? There's sort of reference to like, make it available to the media. And
Yeah,
you're
I'm
like,
like-
okay,
We've never done, I mean,
Yeah,
I've
yeah,
never
so-
known this.
We
The
got some
closest
great
was-
ideas in the correspondence
yes.
about how we
absolutely,
could do this.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You know, one of the other thing that I was thinking of is that as a select board, when town meeting ends, there's always this turnover of committees. We ought to consider some outreach in the bridge that says there may be openings coming and here's how to submit a volunteer card and
no,
but let's make sure our listing's up to
we need
date
to-
first.
We need to do a better job.
But we could do more.
Yep.
Okay, so I'll take back maybe
Yep.
some ideas, right, on
Yep.
how we,
Okay.
without trying to, be too specific on everything, but we talked about appointment for additional terms, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think got some feedback on that piece, which is section B. C and D is about the dual committee appointments,
Yep.
really.
Yep.
And I just sort of thoughts on anything.
Well, one of the things in here that always, it sort of bugs me that people are saying there's dual committees, but we have, there's committees where we've made an exception to allow someone on two committees, two completely different separate committees. I don't know how often that happens. The second is this very common scenario where you've got a committee that's made up of members of other committees.
Yeah, yeah,
And I wish
yeah.
that we would
Yeah.
categorize that
Yes.
differently as a different kind of exception.
Yes.
And then sometimes we have a committee, and I think this happened with 2229,
Yes.
where they were exempt entirely from this policy. It's set in the charter for 2229
We
because of
encouraged
this.
them. We didn't.
I think it was explicit, all the members were excluded from this policy.
I don't know, but we did get a lot of overlap in that.
Yeah, no, but I think it was explicit in the charge of the committee. It said that members would be
Doesn't matter.
recruited and be exempt. But my only point is, I don't know if that's something we would want to do. It's such a rare exception to do. But when we think about these dual committees, my point was in the policy, unlike the additional terms, there's
Yeah.
3 different criteria for when that might apply. We should be as explicit on these dual committee
Yeah, I
ones
mean,
as
there is a
possible, too.
sentence in there on exceptions for instances where, but we should go back, I mean, what I'm hearing is, from you, Wendy, is go back, let's look at
Categorize it.
that, and let's
Yeah.
make sure that we're really clear, or even maybe
Just
categorize
categorize
them
it,
into
yeah.
the.
I'd like to know how many of our charges actually already require it.
I know,
And how many of our charges encourage it?
So
I think we should, yeah.
I think it's for the task forces.
Right.
I think all the task forces have.
No,
this
CPC, is
No,
CPC a task force? No, it's
No.
recurring. And then your housing production
Yeah.
plan is made up of all,
When you say, I just want to make sure I'm getting the question right.
Yeah.
Require,
like CPC requires a representative from the Recreation
so, like,
Committee.
yeah,
the-
okay.
yeah,
You
that-
have to have
that's what I
somebody
mean.
from
Another committee.
the rec committee, you have to
Right,
have somebody
right.
from this committee.
Exactly.
you have to have
And
somebody
Yeah,
then
from
there are
that's what I
other
meant.
committees in their charge where it doesn't require it, but it strongly encourages it with those words. We strongly
It doesn't, yeah.
encourage members from XYZ committee.
I mean, typically, it's there in order to encourage a specific coordination that we're looking for
Exactly.
between the effort of that board or committee with some other board or committee. What you're really hoping for is that's going to go on at that level with regular contact between those groups.
Sometimes
Right.
it's that, and that's.
And
what
I think that's been really successful in breaking down some silos. But what I was talking about was an exception that we were talking about a minute or two ago.
Yeah,
And I think it's for task forces, like 2229 was a task force.
right.
It had a finite date. So we made this exemption for the whole committee, and I think we've done that for other task forces.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, so there's some, I mean, we can do some more digging,
More research on that, yeah. I
right?
don't-
To
Yeah,
sort
I
of
think-
understand as well, as best we can, right, what
Yeah.
how much of that, not overlap, how much of that is sort of required.
Yeah, and I think that, so it's interesting because, again, that's one of those things that turns up in the charging, in the documents that create these groups.
Exactly.
Most of the time. But, I won't say that that's 100% of the time, and there may be a few instances, but I think they're fairly rare where someone actually is independently appointed to two things, but usually that's going to be avoided. I mean, I can't think of an example of that,
I can,
but, okay,
but,
all right.
No, we don't want to go back down that.
No, but
okay,
that's,
go ahead.
Not now.
but it might make sense to differentiate
Well,
that.
to differentiate, yes. I mean, I think we
Yeah.
have something in there, but let's make sure that it's clear. And even when we talk about setting up new committees, when do we?
Explicit.
Well, being
Yeah.
explicit, when do we say we need members of
Yeah.
other committees versus, hey, we should have new
Yeah.
people, right?
Yeah.
Well, we're setting up remember last week, we looked over a draft of the
Yeah,
land use
yeah,
matrix,
yeah.
right? And that had 10 people, and 8 of them were from other committees,
Yeah.
right? And I think we understood why.
Yep.
So that's a really good example where, having dual membership, and some of those people might be on other committees, so.
Yeah, and interestingly, though, I think that it's the typical practice of when we write a charge that says there will be a member, like, for example, Community Preservation Committee has a member from the Rec Commission on it. It's the Rec Commission who decides who that member actually
right.
Yeah,
is.
that's right.
It's not
The
the
select board.
appointing authority as the select board. So presumably that, that's an assignment from the primary committee that that person represents. And that won't be obvious if you, pull up the webpage of the CPC and say, although it could maybe be more obvious because it could say Rec Commission representative or something like that on it. I just don't know if it does.
Yep. Okay. No, that's really helpful. So I'll keep us going here. So I didn't see anything in section E. Section F was criteria for selection, which we already talked about.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
demographics, thoughts, opinions. I didn't see anything in the residency section. The role of the committee in appointments. It's worth talking about for a minute because the language says committees shall not provide their suggestions on candidates to the appointing authority with any rank order, which
With rank order.
is an interesting state. I mean, it kind of says, give me some names, but don't tell me who you like.
That's right.
Okay, so I just
But then-
want to,
Yeah.
do we want committees to interview prospective candidates or?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. I mean, that's my expectation.
Well, no, I don't know.
Well,
Well,
interviews
But
is
if you
strong
interview
word.
them and you say, I
That's
interviewed these
different.
people, but I'm not telling you,
Yeah, yeah.
like, here's just some names of people and you decide, like, it's an interest.
Well, I encourage people to go to meetings. So if
Yep.
someone is interested in a board or committee, I encourage them to go to the meetings. And then the chair will be there and they'll find out, is this something that the person wants to do? Are they going to be a good fit? And not just are they going to get along, but are they going to
Right.
bring something new? So I think and then I get feedback from the chair.
Isn't there at least one case, and I want to say it's like the library committee, because I remember Henry was working on this
Yeah.
last year,
Yeah.
where the requirement is that the
board interview.
the chair is supposed to actually nominate a
It
couple
might be a
people to
specific
the.
thing in that.
Yeah,
might be.
to
Yeah,
that
maybe.
The library
particular
has
one.
its own, like, charter and all that
Yeah,
stuff. Yes.
I wanted,
I don't
I'm
remember
not,
that, but it could be.
yeah, where
Could be.
they're supposed to be given, and it might not be the library, but the situation was the board was supposed to nominate two people from which the select board liaison was supposed to pick one person.
Oh.
And, why, I don't know. But
Well, that brings up to me is that we kind of need to know the baseline here.
Yeah.
We need, we do need the data that tells us how many committees are requiring dual, how many are encouraging, how many are defining how people are appointed, how much is the current chair involved or not involved, because I think they're kind of all over the place. To me, it would be helpful moving forward if I knew the baseline. So,
Yeah.
and
I think
this
some-
is data
yeah.
that we need
And-
collected.
But is it like what's happening now, or what do we want? What do we think should be happening?
think-
I mean,
I
I've
think
seen
before-
lots of different things happening.
I would like to know what's happening now.
From each committee on how they're doing it?
Well, along these particular things, like how many are requiring, how many
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
encouraging, how many actually specify how the current committee is going to be involved in the decision for
What we know about
appointing.
demographics, I mean.
What we know about what we might know about demographics. How many committees, how many people are there? How many people are filled out volunteer cards? Do we know how many volunteer cards we have by committee? I mean, we're hearing people ask for data-driven decisions, so this is data that I think we need.
I think it also, along with the verbiage of the charge itself, I think
Yes.
it also helps inform that and
Yes.
helps with the understanding of the, here's the story.
Yeah, so
Right, so
getting that, I think getting that data would help me, help
It's a big ask.
you. It is.
I think it's a very big ask.
It is. I know that.
Okay,
Before-
just saying.
before you
that,
move-
just and the volunteer card stuff. Just saying, there's a lot of stuff in there that has no dates, and I'll just tell you, anything that doesn't have a date in it should not be used. I mean, I've been pulling that database a lot,
Yeah.
So
and
I
it's
think this would be a valuable thing to
Okay.
find out.
Yes.
okay.
Before you move off this point, if I could just throw something out. Obviously, I make appointments, not so much to policy. I mean, really not to policy-making board. So boards that are conducting business on behalf of the administration generally. I think this issue, from my perspective, sometimes can be problematic when you're expecting all or most of your feedback to come from existing board and committee members. I've had instances where people are trying to get on boards, and we have boards and committees that maybe people have been seated on those boards and committees for a long time. They've expressed opinions that I'm not really interested in such and such because so-and-so, because I view that person as being disruptive. I encounter that a lot, and to me, sometimes to the extent where the board is expecting to tell me who they want appointed, and I don't think that that's appropriate, and that it's problematic because I've interviewed people who I thought would be very good to a board and committee, and then it's very difficult to get buy-in from the chair or members for a different point of view.
So how would we, I guess the challenge is, how do we write that into a policy so that we avoid that problem, but still keep some continuity?
And then how do you get volunteers?
I think there is a difference. There's generally a difference between the appointments I'm making to what I would call administrative boards and policy-making boards.
No, I don't. Sometimes.
Maybe it'd be interesting to see that split, because unless I go look it up, I'm not always aware which boards are which.
That's another thing. I think it would be helpful to make that more clear, because there have been instances where there's been confusion in who the appointing authority is.
I know.
At the beginning of this, you had a slide that said, what's the problem we're trying to solve? And I feel like we've brought up a lot of ideas.
But that's good.
I would recommend that you take back what you've heard tonight.
Yep.
Reflect on it, see how much data you can collect.
Yep.
And come back to us in a week or two.
Yep.
And kind of reframe what's the problem we're trying to solve.
Yep. Because I
Does
think
that sound?
Yeah, I think that's good. I mean, and I just had the last slide here was, which I think was.
Oh, I thought that was the last.
No,
slide.
there is. Yeah, the proposed next steps.
Oh, no, you had a
Yes.
thank
Yep.
you slide.
Yeah, that's all. Just sort of.
Very
he
good.
already
So some additional
anticipated.
data, right, to provide
Yep, more data.
context-informed decisions, right? So some of the things that you talked about, Mary probably even expanded from what I had
Yep,
here.
yes.
We'll take the feedback from the meet here and try to, kind of frame what.
Does that sound good? Because
Yeah.
we kind of threw
Yeah, there's a lot.
at
No,
you.
but there's a lot here. And I mean, even
There's a
that
lot
that very last piece of like the role in the committee and sort of,
Yes.
I think we have to clarify some stuff there.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So coming back with more of those narrowing into like the principles or the, specific areas that
Yep.
we talked about today that we
So
would
what do
want
we
to
want?
tackle.
How much realistically can we bite off here?
Yeah.
And what is the problem
Yeah,
that we're
that's
trying to
right.
solve?
That's right. Yep. I think that's good. So thank you. I know there's a
No, thank you.
here. So it's a start, right?
It is a start.
Yeah,
It is a start. It's a good start. Thank you. Thank you for agreeing to that. Thank you. Okay.
So, sorry, Mary, when do you want me, you don't have to answer right now,
Yeah.
but just let me know.
Okay. I'll let you know. Okay. Liaison reports. Anybody have anything they want to add? Anything, questions they have that we have for each other?
I don't think I have anything.
My week was MCI Concord, and you heard from them.
Yep, that was good. That was very good. Very, very reassuring. Feels like something's working really well.
I will say that the tour, the Department of Correction really generously spent time with our consultants and gave them, a great deal of access to the property, which I think is gonna be really useful. I think they got a good sense of many of the buildings and what it was like there. So, I just wanted to express my thanks to Dean Gray and Jeff Quick in particular, who helped, facilitate that and really made them very welcome.
Great.
Great.
Anything else?
No,
We're
I have
good.
nothing.
We good? You okay, Terry?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved.
Do you want to take a roll call?
Everybody get up and leave. No, okay, Ms. Ackerman.
Aye.
Ms. Hartman.
Aye.
Myself, I'm an aye. Mr. McKinnon.
Aye.
And Ms. Ravelli.
Aye.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Adjourned at 8:42.